Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad at Magic podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 60.
60. So there's 60 seconds in an hour. There's 60 seconds in a minute. We're starting off good here. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. Ben, do you know why there are 60 and 60?
No, I have no idea. I'm excited for you to tell me because I've never looked this up.
So it has to do with number systems that very smart people used way back in the day before numbers were really used. So if you think about like before we had like a set decimal system, base 10, which is what we use now, people had to come up with this crap just on the fly to explain the things that they were observing.
Sure, it's easy enough to observe that the Earth takes 24 hours to rotate around once on its axis, and the sun reaches about the same point in the sky in this amount of period. But how do you chop that up into chunks that you can then predict?
Dude, you're making so many assumptions, because if you're an ancient Mesopotamian or an ancient Egyptian, all you know is that there's this really bright thing that flies across the sky at varying angles, and then a bunch of small little bright ones at all the rest of the time.
Yeah.
So it was the ancient Egyptians started off with, they had the first water clock in like 1400 BC or some nonsense, which was craziness, and then all their sundials. And they eventually observed that they could split the night and the darkness into like two sets that had about 12 sets of stars that they could see pretty reliably on each side. So that gives us our 24. But then it was ancient Greek and ancient Mesopotamian. I don't remember like the exact words. Here we go. Yeah, Greek astronomers. And they were further dividing like the rotation of the Earth or the rotation of the heavens around the Earth, whichever your perspective was. And they were using a base 60 system. It's a sexagesimal.
Wow.
I can't pronounce that very well. But they found
their number system was base 60?
For that one. For making these calculations, because it was very easy to take a base 60 system and break it down into much smaller fractions, since 60 is divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you can break it down in a bunch of different ways into a bunch of very, very small, precise pieces.
Oh, yeah, it's a great number.
So that's because it was just convenient, is the bottom line answer. But for thousands of years after that, nobody cared about minutes, anything less than an hour. Like hours were kind of there with sundials and things. But it wasn't until the first mechanical clocks in like the 1600s, I believe, when people started paying attention to anything less than an hour. And even then, the first mechanical clocks were only broken down by fractions of an hour, sometimes as non-precise as like 15 minutes. You just have the quarters of an hour, and that's all you had on a clock face.
It's interesting that you say this, because when I took our cultural sensitivity class in my Army combat skills training, I remember them specifically teaching us about how the tribal Afghans don't really think of being early or late in terms of minutes.
I mean, that makes sense if your culture is not built around very precise cross-continental virtual meetings to record a podcast. Then you really don't have to have up-to-the-minute timing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we've become more and more slave to the minute and the second, as with the advent of like the wristwatch and synchronized clocks.
I'll go further to say that with telework and like online learning, we're narrowing it down even closer, because before, if I had to leave for work to get there on time, I would always pad that out by 15 or 20 minutes to make sure I got there. But if you're teleworking, you plan to roll up to your computer, 10, 15 seconds early tops?
This is fascinating. I want to go on a tangent here for a minute, because there's so many things that are like this. Another one that comes to mind immediately is the smart bomb. You know, if you go back to the advent of strategic aerial bombing in like the dawn of it in World War I, you just had these dumb bombs that you dropped from a plane very inaccurately. And they tried to make them more and more accurate by using like the Norden bomb sight and guided bombs and those kinds of things. But it wasn't until the advent of GPS that we could, literally put a bomb through a window. And with all of that, with the increased accuracy of the weapon, then they would tune the explosive charge so that you could control the collateral damage rather than just trying to bomb an area. You're just trying to hit a very specific target. So as it's gotten more and more and more accurate, then we've become more focused on what we're trying to do with it. And it feels like that with time, as there's this competing ethic of trying to be more precise for a reason. You were talking about attending meetings. Is it equally bad form to show up early to an online meeting?
I try to show up early to online meetings because that's how I was raised in a military environment. If you're not 5 minutes early, you're late.
You're late, yeah.
But at the same token, logging into a virtual meeting 5 minutes early doesn't get you anything. There's no pre-meeting chatter or anything going on.
Yeah, and then definitely late is bad form.
Still, as always. So we all should just strive for exact precision. Like if you say you're going to be there at 4, everybody synchronize your watches, then freaking be there at 4. And now, with cell phones being more and more ubiquitous, we don't even have to worry about the flex between my clock is 2 minutes slower than this guy's watch. No. Everybody's using their phone for time now, and all the phones are synchronized off of the cell towers, which are all synchronized to each other, which are all synchronized to some clock in Switzerland or wherever that is, Greenland.
Yeah, there's not even like a risk that you're just going to not have your clocks working together.
Yeah. So there you go.
Now, there are maxims that are kind of residual of, like you said, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. There's also kind of like be 15 minutes early for a job interview kind of thing. Have we just reached the point now that even though those things are still hanging on, they're not really the thing? Is it just don't be late? Is that the new rule?
I don't know. I think I'm still a millennial, and I'm an older millennial, so I'm of the opinion where if you're actually going to go see somebody, like if you show up exactly on time, that's good, but showing up earlier is better. Not super early. Oh, this gets into an etiquette thing. Because if you're invited to like a party or like a social event, it's actually bad form to show up early or on time. You're supposed to show up after the designated start time.
Yeah, but then that creates this weird thing where if you're the host and you want to know when to plan for your guests to arrive, do you tell them earlier than you actually intend to because you know they're going to be late?
Oh, I do this to my family all the time. I tell my if I'm going to have an event, I tell my family it's going to be at time X, and then I tell my brother it's going to be at X minus 15, because inevitably he's still going to be late.
Does that work?
No, never.
All right, then. Yeah, it's like setting your own clock ahead so that you can be early when you tend to be late. You know that you set your clock ahead, so you adjust for it anyway.
Can I go on a bit of a tangent for a second?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to apologize to my brother over this podcast because I'm going to tell a funny story about him that I love to death. Because my brother is the only person that can be 15 minutes early and still be 15 minutes late.
What?
Yeah, it's a great story. So,
all right, go.
This is back when I was still a pool guy, and I was doing this big job, a horrendously big job, and I needed help. I needed another set of hands to help me do something. And I asked him if he could be there. He's like, sure, no problem. What time do you want me there? I said, I will be there at 2 o'clock. I'm like, great. And then he, like, multiple times a day texted me, what time? 2 o'clock. What time? 2 o'clock. I never shifted. Like, it's going to be 2 o'clock. And then he calls me at 1:45, and I am driving there, and I'm 10 minutes out. And he goes, hey, I'm here. And I go, you're 15 minutes early. I said I was going to be there until 2. I will be there, like, right at 2. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go for a run. My brother, who is parked in front of my customer's house, ready to assist me with the service I'm going to do in this person's house, has 15 minutes to kill, and him being the ridiculously in-shape person that he is, decides I'm going to go knock out like a mile or a mile and a half before I, go do this job with my brother.
Sure.
And so he goes for a run. And I pass him on the road farther than a mile away from this person's house as I'm driving up to that person's house. And then I show up and I start setting up to do the job. And apparently he decided he was feeling pretty good, so he went a little farther, 2.5 miles or something, before he turned around and came back. And by the time he came back, I was waiting on him. Because I had done all the prep work that I could, and now I needed him there to help me. And he was 15 minutes late. He showed up 15 minutes early and was still somehow 15 minutes late.
All right. That's amazing. Good job, Alex. Last time on the Bad at Magic podcast, you mentioned that you were trying to sell online a whole bunch of old gaming collectibles, like Warhammer and stuff like that. How's the sale going? You said you thought you had $4,000 worth of collectibles?
So that's the retail. Like if you were to purchase all of the things that I had in that pile, right now, brand new.
Yeah, but you've made improvements to them over retail.
I mean, I put them together and I painted them. Some people see that as improvement. Some people see that as a bad thing. Some people
really.
Some people want to paint them themselves, especially if it's a bad paint job. People don't want bad paint jobs on their miniatures.
I got it, but I saw the photos and I posted some of them on our Facebook page. If you go there and look at the episode 59 album, They are good paint jobs.
I will say the Crimson Fists were some of the latest models that I had ever painted, and I did a good job, and I had blended different colors and did highlights and lowlights and inking and all the things that you're supposed to do as a fancy paint job guy. But I also had some Chaos Space Marines, some Thousand Suns that I had painted in college and was super proud of, and they looked like garbage. They looked like the equivalent of like the 3D equivalent of a fifth grader coloring on a coloring book. Like, it was bad.
So do people look at that as just like an old car that they're going to repaint? They're like, okay, I'll buy him, but I'm going to have to spray him with the base coat and then start over?
Sometimes. I remember I bought a bunch of models. A lot of my War Machine army I bought already painted because they were a smoking deal. And part of the reason they were smoking deals is because they were already poorly painted. And so then I had to spend a couple of days worth of work scrubbing all that paint off before I could rebase coat them and repaint them myself.
I had a friend who got a whole set, a play set of dual lands from Magic the Gathering that were like that. Somebody had colored all over them, and he just bought them all. And so he can play with them. They're not very valuable, but they're functional.
They're still dual lands, I guess, with crayon marks on them. Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, I don't know. I'd be mad. Anywho, I broke the lot. Like, nobody wanted to buy the whole thing. Like, put the whole thing on Craigslist and crickets. But I broke.
It's like trying to sell a gold bar that's worth $46,000. You can break it up and sell it an ounce at a time, but you can't sell all of it at once.
There you go. So I broke it up into 5 lots based on like the different armies that I had, and all 5 of them have sold. 4 of them I've already shipped out. I have 1 that I need to ship in the next couple of days, and then I have a couple of lingering objects hanging out. I have one of the carrying cases and a bunch of the books still, but yeah, no, it was successful, and it was sad to put them all in the mail. Like, I went to the UPS store with all my models to ship out the first batch, and like, what are these? I'm like, oh, just call them toys. Like, what do you mean toys? What are they? Because all you could see was the foam that I had packaged them in. Oh, well,
they're just asking for you to declare the contents of the package.
Yeah, but
so they know there's no lithium batteries or contraband.
Yeah, no fireworks or poison or scorpions or anything like that. No, but he couldn't see it all because it's in the foam, and I was like, oh, well, they're just toys. And I opened it and showed it to him, and like, he called. Like, you know how these employees are. They're probably late teens, early 20s. Like, oh, dude, come over here. And he called the other 2 guys, and they were, like, taking them out and looking at him. Like, oh, these are so awesome. Like,
at the post office?
Yeah, at the UPS store. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's my tech marine. I painted him lovingly, and he's got the multi-melta. And one time he killed a tank all by himself, even though he shouldn't have. Just reminiscing.
Did you paint a little medal on his chest?
Not him. There was another model that I had. He had done such tremendous things that I was keeping a tally on the back of his model of all of the tremendous feats that he had accomplished.
Awesome. That reminds me of something my brother-in-law did. He's kind of a nerd's nerd, and he built some model rockets that he would go launch with his kids. And every time he would launch one, he researched what the Air Force medals they give to people for doing those kinds of things are, and he would paint on the side of it like the little Air Force ribbon, and then devices on them. So if it'd give it a meritorious service medal and then an oak leaf cluster. Yeah,
man, that is nerdy. It's pretty hardcore.
Very cool. All right, Josh. So last time, or maybe the time before that, on the Bad at Magic podcast, I mentioned we'd had a casualty in Board Game Survivor, and one of the games that had not made the cut was called Super Fight, and I kind of given you the gist of the game, and you wanted to try it out. So we're going to try this live. We haven't done this before. Here on the podcast, you and I are going to have a Super Fight. So the way that the game works is each player gets 3 random nouns and 3 random adjectives, basically powers and heroes, and then they pick. So you're going to pick yours first. Your 3 heroes you have to choose from are you've got a leprechaun, a dragon, and my boss.
Well, my boss is an accountant, so I'm going to go with the dragon, of course.
Okay, so dragon will be your hero.
Yeah, you're going to need to verify which type of dragon we're discussing. Is this Dungeons and Dragons standard dragons? We're talking Skyrim dragons, because those are drakes.
You get to decide. Okay, all right, your dragon is either can blow 200-mile-per-hour winds, throws 200-mile-per-hour fastballs, or is made of guacamole.
Oh, well, blows 200-mile-an-hour winds.
All right, so we'll put that down. Now, you get one random one that you don't get to choose. So this will be either a power or something bad. Has telekinesis.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
A telekinetic dragon that can make 200-mile-an-hour winds?
Yes, your telekinetic dragon that can make 200-mile-an-hour winds.
Oh, just scoop them up, Ben. You have lost this.
And now I'm going to choose mine. I've got Justin Bieber, a senior citizen bowling team, and a supermodel. Oh my gosh, I'm picking Justin Bieber. This is Justin Bieber that throws spears, has no depth perception, or is piloting an attack drone. This is going to be Justin Bieber that throws spears, and I'm going to get my random... and he's a hypnotist. Oh! It just got real.
A twist!
Okay, so this is Justin Bieber that throws spears and is a hypnotist, and your dragon has telekinesis and can blow 200-mile-per-hour winds. Go.
Am I supposed to argue both sides of this or discuss how?
The younger person goes first.
Oh, the younger person goes first. I'm just making a case for why my telekinetic dragon would kill Justin Bieber.
With Justin Bieber, the hypnotist that throws spears.
Justin Bieber, the hypnotist that throws spears. So first of all, like when Justin Bieber approaches my dragon, sleeping on its massive hoard of gold and jewels, like he is a minute, like, distraction at best. And huck all the spears you want, Justin Bieber. Like, either they're stopped by telekinesis or they're blown back at you as you tumble back down whatever entryway you crawled up in to get up to my hoard by these 200-mile-an-hour winds, or the telekinesis. Take your pick.
So you're imagining a Hobbit-like scenario where Justin has gone to the dragon's hoard questing treasure?
Well, I'll tell you right now, there's no reason for the dragon to seek out Justin Bieber.
Well, Justin doesn't need your treasure, dragon.
Oh, Justin's sitting on his golden throne on top of all of his
own hoard. Maybe your dragon's coming after Justin's gold.
Oh, coming after Justin's multi-platinum records, all of those that he's sold. No.
Well, the Biebs... for one, is a very effective hypnotist, and little did you know, but your dragon is a fan, so that's already standing in the way.
My dragon,
it's a Canadian dragon.
My Canadian dragon is such a fan that he blows 200-mile-an-hour winds, and Justin Bieber dies with either shrapnel from all the stuff that's in those winds, or by blowing into a wall or other solid object in his path.
All right, well, Justin survived the first 200-mile-per-hour wind blow and then was able to achieve a hypnotist lock on the dragon, and he is now in control of the dragon.
Is this like a mind slaver lock? Because I can control your every move, I just win by default? How is he going to kill the dragon? Can a hypnotist make its subject kill itself? Because if not, then Justin Bieber still has no chance. Is
kill the objective here?
What is the objective?
What is victory? We get to decide what victory is.
The victory is. This is what we should have done it first. We should have defined what the scenario is. Because in my mind, of course, Justin Bieber's after the dragon's gold. I don't know what the dragon would be going after Justin Bieber for.
Justin's richer than the dragon. He doesn't need the dragon's gold.
All right, so the dragon was clearly offended by all of Justin Bieber's terrible music. It just wants him dead. And that's what the dragon's after.
Yeah. All right, I'll put a poll up on our subreddit, and the listeners can vote and decide whether the telekinetic dragon defeats the Justin Bieber, the spear thrower.
I think we can boil this down to this simple fact, is whoever gets the drop on the other is the winner. Because if the dragon ambushes Justin Bieber, it's all over. But if Justin Bieber approaches the dragon and the dragon is unawares and gets hypnotized, then the dragon's kind of locked out at that point.
Definitely, I think you're right. And listeners, if you do go to the subreddit and weigh in on the poll for the super fight of Justin Bieber versus Dragon, let us know what you think of this segment and see if we should do it again in the future.
You had to represent Justin Bieber. That must have been terrible for you.
Well, what were my other choices? A senior citizen bowling team?
That was going to be my pick.
All right, Josh, I want to talk quick bad at husbanding. There wasn't a specific incident this week, but I want to talk about a lesson I've learned as a husband over the years, because one of the things about being bad at husbanding is that you have a natural coach who will teach you the ways of being better at husbanding.
And that would be the person that you are husband to.
Right. The one that granted you the title. So
the one that granted the title?
Yes.
And has the ability to take it away.
I think I may have mentioned this on the podcast before, but early in our relationship, I noticed when we would have discussions, there would sometimes be this natural tension where she would what I thought she was doing was presenting me a problem that I would need to help fix, and so I would assume the role of the fixer and help solve the problem, and it would just get tense, and there would start to be another problem that was the discussion itself rather than the original thing we were talking about. And I'd be like, hang on a sec, what's going on here? I thought I was trying to help, and now there's a secondary problem in addition to the primary problem. That wasn't the goal here.
So what's really funny about this scenario is I have experienced it several times, but from the other side. I'm the one that's constantly approaching my wife for commiseration, and she is such a practical person. She's trying to fix these problems, and I get upset with her. Our first biggest fight that we ever had when we were first dating was because of something that happened at work, and I just was raving about it. And then she sided with the person that was against me because I had done wrong. And I was affronted, just so upset with her for not just being like, oh yeah, that sucks.
Okay, so if I may, I want to name what it is you were in search of, and perhaps the problem that Nicole had faced. And that is, and this is how I learned to resolve it in our relationship, is when I start to sense the tension that's occurring because of the mismatch of intentions between the two individuals, you have a moment where you define the conversation. And what I learned to say to Alicia was this: are we having a fixing conversation or an understanding conversation? And by defining that, then you could properly focus your efforts and, like you said, express understanding rather than trying to fix. And occasionally, I will have perceived that we were having an understanding conversation, and she will stop me and say, no, we're having a fixing conversation. And I can adjust accordingly.
Oh, excellent. That is good to have. I've noticed in at least my marriage, that's becoming less and less of a problem as time goes on because we're both in such specialized fields. Like, she is an HR professional, and I am an accountant. And when we talk about the problems that we have at work, it's usually just to like vent. And we both know that because my wife is a lovely and intelligent person.
So by default, a work conversation is an understanding conversation.
Yes, because I'm not expecting her to fix my accounting problem, and she's not expecting me to fix her HR problem. I'm terrible with people.
Right, and she's probably just giving you vague details without compromising privacy. Same for you.
Yes, of course. We never compromise the privacy of the people we do work for, regardless of how deliciously juicy the gossip is.
I'm talking about, work stuff that, the kind of work stuff. And she's talking about when she interprets, there's a professional ethic of protecting people's privacy like she went and interpreted for someone going on a doctor's visit. So she's there for their doctor's visit the whole time.
I see. Well, there's a there's a difference in kind here. Because, like, if your wife divulges that to you, or if me and my wife divulge things to each other about client privilege or people's privilege or information or whatever, then, like, the worst thing that happens is we get a slap on the wrist and, like, a letter. Hey, stop it. Bad. Don't do that again. But if you start divulging things to your wife, that's when dudes on zip lines, like, come in through your windows in the middle of the night and haul you off to, like, some nameless prison.
Me talking about my secrets could include jail time or, Yeah, like that. So there was another one very similar along these lines that was another tension that I thought would fit into the same bucket, but it didn't quite. And it took me a while to come to the understanding of what was happening. Here was the understanding. When I would make an evaluation of a repetitive task, I would do it on a recurring basis. For instance, cleaning the house. Like, I want the house clean at the end of the day and at some point in the middle of the day before that. Like, so you don't just like start the day messing it up all day and then at the end of the day you clean it up and then the next day you start over again. So the expectation would be like when the kids come home from school, they don't just throw their stuff all over the floor, get their snacks out and leave a mess in the kitchen and the whole house is a cluttery mess when I get home from work. And my wife works really hard. Like, she takes care of 8 people and our house, and she works and does all of these things, and it's a whole big pile of tasks. And my expectation that every day at 5 o'clock the house would be clean just didn't fit into her model of it. And that is, I clean, I cleaned really hard this week on Tuesday, and the house was clean back then. And so I would come home and at 5 o'clock the house would be wrecked and be like, what's going on around here? Why is it like this? And she would say, I don't know what you're talking about. I cleaned really hard this week.
This is a very interesting discussion about temporal mechanics and expectations.
Yes.
Because what you're talking about is you have set basically a threshold for, I do not want the house to exceed this threshold of messiness at any given time. And then at specific times, I would like it to be even less than that. I would like inspection times to be almost perfect.
You nailed it. That's exactly the way it works.
But for her, from her perspective, it's an effort thing. Like, she's putting in effort over time, and as long as she has exceeded the required effort that she feels over whatever period of time, then the inspections are irrelevant.
Perfect. That's exactly the problem. I called it quantitative versus qualitative. For me, like you said, there's a threshold, and for her, it's the quality of having done it.
Yeah, she put in the effort, so it's done.
And if we were evaluating it, we would both express it in terms of a binary evaluation. I would say it is sufficiently cleaned, and she would say I have cleaned sufficiently. But we would both give the other one a negative if we compared against each other.
Okay.
I would say she had given a false positive for having cleaned based on my criteria, and she would say I was falsely identifying what she had done based on her criteria, and it comes to this disagreement. And the thing I needed to realize was I had to validate her effort evaluation that she had made.
Right.
And that was what was causing the friction, because I would do my quantitative evaluation based on the threshold in a certain time and say invalid result. And she would think that meant I was invalidating the work she'd done.
Right. Yeah, it's a difference. Yeah, the conversation is different from her perspective because, like you said, you had different criteria.
Right.
Okay, so how did you resolve that? Like, sweetheart, I appreciate all of the effort that you've put into cleaning this house. You work so hard. But you have failed this inspection, and this is the third one in a row.
You almost got it. Yes. It's that first one. Sweetheart, you worked really hard. I remember how much time you put in. I know you're really tired right now. I'm going to go take care of this.
Oh, look at you pitching it.
Because that's the only way to do it at that point. Because otherwise I'm just invalidating the thing I just said, which is acknowledging her contribution and the effort that went into it. So that's been my position. So if we're having tension over a conversation because I'm trying to fix something, we synchronize and she tells me it's understanding. And if we're having tension because there's a task that needs to be done and she's already put in her expected level of effort, then I just have to either be willing to accept the status of the person, place, or thing, or do it myself.
We have such different marriages because I can imagine, I know exactly what would happen if I came home one day and stood in the middle of the living room and looked around and said, this house fails my inspection for cleanliness. What have you been doing all day? And my wife and I would have a very calm, logical discussion about how we could fix or rectify that after I regained consciousness from when she smacked me with a chair.
Yeah. I don't know, listeners, if these things are helpful to you. Maybe you're going through this right now, or you've gone through it in the past. If you come to another creative solution that wasn't listed here to include Josh's solution he just presented, then share. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You can join us on the subreddit, Reddit/r/BadAtMagic, or on our Facebook page, and love to hear what you have to say.
If you like what we do, wait a minute, we're not wrapping up. It's way too early for that. No, can I throw in like a Bad at Husbanding light? Just like a quick a snippet. Okay. I noticed this the other day and I wanted to mention it. How come when your kids are good, they're our kids? But when your kids are bad, they're your kids?
Wait. Okay, I thought this was already such a solved cultural phenomenon that it's only ever done in irony.
Oh.
Are you saying that it happens in your house in earnest?
All the time, yeah. Oh, if one of us, it doesn't matter which one, either one of us that observes the action that made this happen, we walk into the room, we're like, you will not believe what your son/daughter did. And it's always in the negative sense.
If I ever say it like that, just like you said, I'm very deliberately being silly. Like,
okay.
Pointedly ironic. Like if I can hear them. My kids do something we call the Sunday crazies, where they make a big mess and they run around and scream and laugh when we're trying to take a nap. And I'd be like, "Do you hear your daughter out there inciting her siblings into the Sunday crazies?" But when I say your daughter, it's to point out that someone's behaving badly.
We do it naturally. Like, we don't ever try to do it, and it's not a deliberate decision to be ironic. I think it's just both of us trying to dissociate ourselves from the negative behavior.
That must be it. That must be the origin of that phenomenon.
This behavior obviously does not stem from me. It must stem from you. So therefore, in this circumstance, this is your child and not mine.
It must also show a fundamental belief that there's a genetic component rather than just a behavioral component. Because otherwise, you should, if it's solely behavioral, then you would bear equal blame for bad behavior. But if it were solely genetic, then you would bear half the blame, I guess.
Before I was a parent, I 100% believed in nurture over nature. Kids are blank slates. You raise them and they develop these things.
And then you had two.
But then I had two, and they both like sodium and salt way more than my wife has, at all. And I love salt. I am overly salty on everything, vinegar.
Yeah.
I just love all that. And it is clear that my kids directly inherited that from me.
That's a good example of something that probably just has to do with the layout of taste buds on their tongue.
Oh, yeah. We're all eating pickles out of the jar, and my wife is practically gagging because we're arguing over who gets to drink the pickle juice straight from the jar.
Yeah, and listeners, if you've ever had Josh's Chex Mix, it's way too salty.
Okay, I've backed off on that. Okay, listeners, don't listen to him. In recent years, I have backed off on the salt quite a bit, and this Thanksgiving, I made an excellent batch that was nowhere near too salty.
Awesome. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. It is time for Bad at Logic. So, because this is episode 60, it is my turn. I have selected a logical fallacy, and this week's logical fallacy is called personal incredulity. Personal incredulity, the fallacy, is saying that because one finds something difficult to understand, it is therefore not true.
Oh, that never happens. That's not, Ben, I can't even understand your explanation. This is clearly entirely false, and everything that you say for the remainder of the podcast is in question.
Yeah. I noticed my niece doing this once, and it kind of irked me. She would basically pretend almost like she hadn't heard you, and therefore we were on an invalid conversation path. And there's a lot of this going on in the rebuttals that are occurring to the very well-documented and scientific logic behind the science of vaccination for COVID-19.
That is exactly where I wanted to take this conversation. Listen, listeners, no judgment. You do you. But you're not, you don't have a doctorate in virology, in pathology, in medicine.
Quote unquote, I do my own research is just the logical fallacy of personal incredulity.
Yes.
Just because you don't understand what those doctors are saying doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah. Did you know this vaccination changes your DNA? Well, in some cells, all vaccinations change. No, I'm not even going to go there. I don't have to explain any of that. Do you know it changes your DNA? My response to that whenever anybody asks me is I don't care. I don't care what it does. Because I've had plenty of vaccinations before, and all the doctors, the people that have spent their whole life learning about this stuff, they tell me it's fine. Just because I don't get it doesn't mean it's not true.
When I was 17, I worked with a guy who had contracted polio as a child, and he had Bob Dole arm.
Oh, I don't even know what that is.
Bob Dole was the guy who ran for president back in the 90s.
I know who Bob Dole is. I don't know what Bob Dole arm is, you jerk.
Don't you remember that Bob Dole couldn't move one of his arms? I can't remember whether his right or his left. And he always just held a pen in it.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it was from a war wound, but it was the same kind of thing. That basically polio had crippled him for life. And all we have to do now is take a little pinprick, and now it's virtually eradicated from society.
Oh, it's making a comeback, though.
The logical polio is?
I thought it. I assume all diseases are making a comeback because of this anti-vax movement. I've done my own research, but I'm not certain.
Well, I know that some diseases we've fully eradicated, like smallpox. We don't even give that vaccination anymore because it doesn't exist in the wild.
I got a smallpox vaccine. What are you talking about?
Because there's a slight intelligence belief that there are enemies out there that have weaponized smallpox that could potentially reintroduce it into the population.
Yeah,
but
it would be nice if the vaccination I got for smallpox did anything against weaponized smallpox.
No, you're talking about anthrax. But
yes. Dang it, you're right. I'm mixing up. I've had so many vaccinations, I'm mixing them up and they're blurring together in my head.
Anyway, if you're ever guilty of using the logical fallacy of personal incredulity, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means you don't understand it.
Now, at the same time, don't let somebody throw something at you saying, like, I've done my own research and did you know X, Y, and Z? Now, that goes back to the fallacy of burden of proof or whatever. Like, it's on them to prove that if you've never heard of any of that stuff. So all of these fit together in this complex puzzle of having an intelligent discussion with another person.
It's why this is taking a long time, but we're working at it together here on the Bad at Magic podcast. And listeners, thank you for being along for the ride. It is time for Bad English, and for Bad English this week, I was in the car and I was listening to a classic song. You know the one, Josh. It's by the Proclaimers. I'm gonna be 500 miles.
Oh yeah, I would walk 500 miles.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this. So I was singing along to the lyrics, and I knew all the words, and suddenly I realized I was singing a word I've always sung, but I didn't know the word, and I never heard it before, and I had to go look it up. Now, the artists that sing that song are twin brothers Craig and Charlie Reid. They're from Scotland, a town called Laois, which is on the east coast of the British Isles, and they wrote this song called I'm Gonna Be 500 Miles, and the first verse follows this very predictable couplet. When I wake up, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. So there's 4 versions of this couplet. Wake up, go out, get drunk, and do you know the 4th one?
I don't. Not off the top of my head, no.
Haiver.
Haiver?
Yeah. And if I haver, I know I'm gonna be the man who's havering to you. What's a haver?
And I don't know. You're talking about song lyrics. We just
Well, we know what wake up, go out, and get drunk is. Yeah, so I looked it up.
We mumble through the words we don't know and just keep singing to the radio.
I know, because the whole rest of the song kind of makes sense, other than the fact that they're walking 500 miles. Do you know what happens if you walk 500 miles from Laois, Scotland?
I don't. What happens?
Ocean is what happens.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have to behind the scenes look here. Ben has put in the show notes a map of Europe with incrementally 500 and then 1,000 mile rings.
500 more.
Yeah, 500 more. From this town in Scotland, just to make sure he knew exactly where these two would end up. Though I don't think he took into account, this is as the crow flies, sir. You can't walk a straight line across England.
Yeah, you're right about that, but I still don't think there's any point in England you can walk 500 miles and not run into ocean.
Well, are they American miles or are they British miles? No. They use the metric system over there.
To haver is to talk in a foolish or trivial manner, to speak nonsense, to babble or gossip. So it just means chat with somebody.
Oh.
So it's so romantic.
It is romantic. If I'm gossiping or just
chat with somebody who wants it to be you.
Oh.
And he's going to walk through the ocean to do it.
I mean, we assumed that it was something positive because the rest of the song is positive.
All right, Josh, for Board Game Survivor this week, I put in the placeholder for it. We played a lot of games this week, having been Thanksgiving week, but I noticed you threw one in here, so I want to hear your story first.
Well, I had no other place really to put it. Like, we're not doing Board Game Survivor in my house, but we have been playing a handful of board games. Like, the kids were off from school this week. I took the week off. My wife took a few days off, and so we've been running out of stuff to do in the house. And the last couple of days, we've landed on board games and puzzles, and that's what we've been occupying our time with. And my son was like, hey, let's play Stratego. I'm like, haha, all right, son, let's play Stratego. Now, he played my wife first.
You mentioned this game, I don't know, a year ago on the podcast, and I think last time you talked about how he just wasn't smart enough to understand the nuance of the secrecy of this game, and it was so obvious about where his thing was, you just knew it right from the beginning.
Yes, and I beat him handily the first time I played with him.
Right.
Now, he has evolved since then, Ben. This is a whole new version of
how
my
old,
son.
How old is he?
He's 10 years old.
Okay, so sometime between 9 and 10, he developed cognitively enough to realize the importance of the secrecy in the game of Stratego. Now, audience, if you've never played the game of Stratego, what it is, you have, I don't know, like 40 pieces.
Something like that.
Red and 40 pieces blue, and they're little castles that on the back side have a number or a symbol, and then on the front side are blank. And you keep them pointed towards your opponent so that they can only see the blank side. And the secrecy, and then you move the pieces according to the rules for moving the pieces, but the secrecy of what's on the other side is the whole point of the game. Yes. You're trying to locate the opponent's flag and capture the flag before they capture yours.
Yes, and on our set there are numbers, and the higher the number is, the stronger the piece is. And so...
And the less of them there are.
Yes. And so, there's only one 10, and a 10 beats every other number that's lower than it, except for the spy. There's a couple of different, nuancey things that happen with the game. Anyway, in general, higher numbers beat lower numbers. Right. Well, so my wife played my son, Stratego, first, and, handily, wrecked him, because he's 10. And in my mind, I didn't even think to quantify, how she wrecked him. I was like, oh, well, she wrecked him because this is a strategy game, and he's 10. But then Daddy, will you play with me? Sure, kid. Let's sit down and play this strategy game.
Okay, so he was iterating the strategy in his mind. He's like, all right, I tried that against Mom. That didn't work. Now I got an idea.
I don't know. I don't know what he was doing, or if it was just... What ended up happening is I know how the game works. I know how the pieces move. Some of them have special rules. And so I set up with a clear plan to victory. This is how I'm going to win. I'm setting my pieces accordingly. Let's do this. And Ben, I don't know if he just randomly assorted his tiles on his side, or if he had a
Assuredly
strategy.
Not.
But he set up rock to my scissors in every way possible.
You were losing all the combats. You didn't know where his flag was.
I immediately lost my best piece to a landmine that had no right being where it was. That's just not how you use them. That's how he used them, and he freaking got me with it.
Okay. This is a different thing than what I thought. So he didn't get a good strategy. He just got lucky with picking a strategy that was really good against what you were trying to do.
Yes. And I don't know if it's because he planned it out in advance, or if he just had a very crude idea of what he wanted to do and implemented it in a way that was just randomly perfect against what I did. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and just say that he freaking Sun Tzu'd the crap out of me. Know your enemy.
All right.
And
good job, Carter.
The game.
Okay, so you lost.
So here's the thing. The way that my son lost to my wife is that my wife eventually wiped out all of his pieces that could move, okay? And all that was left on his side of the board were landmines and the flag. And she didn't know where it was. But she had enough pieces that could move that she could run into every single landmine and still have another piece left over to get the flag. And so then by default she wins.
Okay.
So here's the thing, though.
It's the Russian landmine strategy.
Yes. So late in the game, playing against me, he wiped out every single one of my pieces that could move. It was the exact opposite that happened to my wife. All of my movable pieces were dead, and there was nothing I could do about it. And not only did he have enough pieces to hit every one of my landmines and capture my flag, he didn't do that. He took one of his special pieces that can defuse the landmines and proceeded to defuse every single one of my landmines before he captured the flag.
He was flexing on you.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, that freaking brought me down a peg.
Wow. Awesome. Well done, Carter. Now, that reminds me of something. I don't think you were around for the time when my sons had gotten old enough that they started playing Magic the Gathering. But my oldest son, when a player starts to play Magic the Gathering, they kind of go through tiers of understanding. Let me see. Stop me if I'm describing it wrong. But basically, when you're first playing, you're just trying to understand what you can do based on the cards that are in your hand. And your focus is very much on just utilizing the cards that are in your hand. You're thinking about them. You're always looking at your hand. You're trying to play out the cards in your hand.
Yeah, it's very much focused on what you're doing.
And then as you start to expand your strategy and understand the game a little better, then you're more focused on okay, the board. What's going on the board in front of me? And you're trying to play to the creatures that are out and the spells that are out and play to the board. And then that also is not the final level. The final level is trying to understand what your opponent is doing. What's his strategy? What's he holding? What might he be trying to trick you into doing? What does he think you're doing? And then that's the highest level, I think, of the cognitive understanding of the game of Magic the Gathering.
Yes, it's when you're playing your hand against your opponent's hand. It's not even what's on the table or in front of you. It's what you both have and what you think the other person has.
Yes. So when I would go and bring my sons with me, and they would enjoy to come along, but I recognized that they were still at that first level. So what I would do is build them decks that would maximize their chances of winning at that level.
Yes, I don't care what my opponent does. I'm going to play my little creatures, and they're going to get bigger, and they're going to turn sideways, and they're going to bring your life total to 0.
Yes, and there are times when that's a really bad way to play. Like if your opponent's trying to get you to dump out your hand onto the board so that then they play a spell that clears the board off and now you have an empty hand and no resources left, that's like primo for them. And you or I might read our opponent. One, we would look at the spells they were playing and see if that was the kind of deck that could do that. And two, we would kind of look at them and see if we could discern from the way they were playing if that was their intended course of action.
Oh, you played a creature every turn? Now you only have one card left in your hand? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clear the board now.
Yeah, and we could see if maybe they're reluctant to play or they're trying to say things to make us bait out. So here was my son. Here's what people used to say about him. You can't bluff Michael because he calls every bluff. Like he makes you have it. You got to have the answer because if you don't have the answer, you're going to lose because he's not waiting to see. So there were a lot of times he would win because he called every bluff.
Excellent.
So we played a lot of Magic this week. I brought my 13-year-old nephew along with us to the store, and we played Friday Night Magic, and the format was standard. He had a mono-white deck. I had a red-black Vampires deck. My other son was playing a green-white Tokens deck. It was a good time. We all played against each other and stuff. I went undefeated again, but then at the end, they did something they do sometimes because it was the holiday week, and they had a random die roll to win an entire box of sealed product.
Cool.
And my nephew won the die roll and got $100 worth of cards, which was great, and he was so happy. And I like when they do that kind of thing.
Congratulations to him. Let me point out that you played both your son and your nephew, the nephew that came in from out of town specifically to hang out with you. And he didn't pull back not one iota. You still ground them both into the dirt on your way to Friday Night Magic victory.
Absolutely. This is established on this podcast. That is my default. I don't care how young you are. You're learning through the School of Hard Knocks.
Oh, sorry, nephew. You rolled the wrong opponent today because you're done.
Yeah. Now, there's a cube right now on Magic Online, if you're into this kind of thing. It's called the Living the Dream Cube. They basically took all of like the best cards in Magic that are the kind of cards that when you open it up and you look at it, your eyes light up and you're like, wow, this is really cool. I could do so much great stuff with this. And then it never actually happens in a game of Magic. They're like, what if we took a whole bunch of cards and got them together that was all those cool things you want to do and took out all the things that would prevent that from happening so that everyone's only playing decks where you get to do the cool stuff.
Everybody, it's just cool stuff against cool stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been playing this cube, and it's happened so much. Like, there's this one that's like these two angels, and if you cast them both, then they transform into this giant unstoppable creature where the two cards combine together like Voltron. And you could totally just cast it and do it. There's these cards that double things, and there's like 4 or 5 of them, and I drafted a deck once where I got like all of them. Ooh. So I had a Bitter Blossom out that makes a 1/1 fairy every turn, and it would make 6 of them every turn.
All the fairies.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. So that's fun. You can try that out. Magic the Gathering is definitely living on Board Game Survivor. 2 other games that we played this week. One is called Bananagrams. I highly recommend this. Even if you're not the Magic the Gathering type and you like word games, Bananagrams is like Scrabble but better. All it is just a bag full of letters. What you do is you put them out all face down, you grab 21, and then you, as fast as you can, assemble a valid crossword puzzle.
Oh, with all 21 of your tiles.
Yes, and then once you've done all 21, then you say peel, because it's banana themed, and then everyone has to take an additional tile.
Okay.
And you go until all of the tiles are gone. And if you're the one that's leading from the front, you're forcing people to take additional tiles even though they're not finished with the ones they already had. And then when the winner is the last person when no more tiles can be drawn and you have a fully valid crossword puzzle.
So what's the catch-up feature there? Sounds like if you're in lead at the beginning, you just kind of steamroll it.
It's not a good catch-up feature. It's the guy that's ahead draws an X and then a J. You know.
So it's just bad luck. Bad luck is the catch-up feature.
Yeah, bad luck. It's random. So sometimes you can get lucky with the letters. Sometimes you get all vowels, and you're like, what do I do? It does allow you to toss a letter back and then take 3 in return so that you don't have to get stuck with a bad letter if you don't want. But it's pretty costly.
I feel like the person that's in front, the other players, at some point, there should be some trigger that allows them to trade one of their garbage letters with one of his letters that he hasn't used yet against his will. I think that would be a good catch-up feature.
So, give me your philosophy on house rules.
House rules. Okay. So, when we play a game enough times, I'm big on mechanics. Listeners, I don't know if you know this, but I'm big into math. I'm big into physics. I'm big into the way that cogs fit together and then spin to make a machine go. And so whenever I play any kind of game, I'm always looking the layer below that. Like there's the story and there's the actual gameplay, but then what is making this go? What rules are clicking together to make this machine run? And if I find a place where it's a little, like they don't interlock very well, or there's a little vibration, or the mechanism itself could stand a little bit of improvement, for example, in your Bananagrams example, I feel like that's the time where a well-crafted house rule can shore up some of the weaknesses that the developers didn't consider.
Yes. So Richard Garfield, the designer of Magic the Gathering, was very much this kind of person. He'd play a game through once, and then he was all ready to start implementing house rules. He felt like as long as he understood the mechanics of what was trying to go on, he could tweak it or optimize it for the situation.
Right.
So Bananagrams is definitely a survivor. It scales well. It can be played with 2 people. It can be played with 10 people. It's fun. You don't ever feel like you're totally out of it unless you're just really bad at spelling. So I've never felt the need to implement this house rule because one game's over pretty fast and you start the next game and then it doesn't happen again. So it's the randomness kind of sorts it out.
Well, then I would encourage you the next time you play to pay attention. Is the person who usually clears their tiles first, is that usually the person that ends up winning the game? And how often? Like how closely do those two correlate?
I like your suggestion, though, that you could basically force the person that's in front. Maybe if they force other people to draw a tile without anyone else like 5 times in a row, then you could swap out one of their tiles with one of yours.
Maybe. Or it depends on how many tiles they have left available. Maybe it's just like one specific letter, like whoever has an X gets to throw it at the guy who's winning.
Yeah. Or we could have a separate group of like dummy tiles that if you make everyone else draw 5 times in a row without anyone else in between, then you would have to draw one of the known bad tiles. Like here's the pool of the crappy letters.
Yeah, the problem with the numbers thing there though is then if you do 4 in a row, then you just sit and wait for a second, and then you wait to take one, and then you dump your hand again.
Yeah, I guess you're right. So, but that's a good one. Definitely recommend Bananagrams. Another game that we played together this week is a good party game. It's called One Word. I think we got it a couple Christmases ago as a gift, and we've enjoyed it every time we got it out. It's very simple. In fact, you probably don't need to own the game to do it, other than the fact that you need the box of like suggested categories. It's a group guessing game. There's one person that has to make the guess, and then everyone else trying to help them make the guess. But here's the twist on it. They all have a marker board, and then you reveal the word that they have to guess to everyone except the one person. And then everyone has to write a one-word clue on their board in secret. And then before the other person, the guesser looks, they have to compare their one-word clues to each other, and any duplicate clues are eliminated.
Okay. This is like a weird party game.
So you kind of have to think, what's the most obvious thing, and not say it. And so you're trying to think of like obscure clues that maybe only you would think of that would still be sufficient to give the guesser enough information that they can guess it. Or you could just take the risk and say the obvious thing and hope no one else said it.
So is there 2 sets of players or 3? Is it the person that is guessing and then everybody else?
The person that's guessing and everyone else.
Okay, so 2 sets of players. Now, this is already triggering my social anxiety in case like I was supposed to guess a word that everyone else in the group thought was super easy.
Yes,
and they all optimize
it definitely creates those kinds of situations.
And then you're sitting there and everyone's like, why can't you guess it?
They're like, why can't you get it? It's easy.
I don't know. Stop yelling at me.
It's also obvious to them as the observers who know it, as opposed to you who doesn't and have these obscure clues. And this game, the mechanics of it create really interesting situations where sometimes all you get left, just because of the way it falls out, is 2 really obscure clues. And then even as the people that know it, you're looking at that and you think, I might not have been able to got that based on those 2 clues.
Yet another indication that you like these big social party games. And that makes sense because you have like 14 people at your beck and call at any given point in time.
Yeah, well, okay. That's a great transition point. So to sum up Board Game Survivor, Stratego, Magic the Gathering, Bananagrams, and One Word, all great games, highly recommended. So, last time we met on the Bad at Magic podcast, Josh, you and I were discussing the holidays. And it was such a big topic to try to swallow and digest and discuss the holidays that we ran out of time in the middle of talking about Thanksgiving. And then we took our break, and now we've had Thanksgiving. So let's talk about
the best of all holidays. Let's make this clear. 100% best holiday. No discussion necessary. Clear winner.
Unanimous. We both agree on this point. Definitely the best holiday. Okay, so for Thanksgiving this year, my family had just settled in Louisiana. We got our house. It's big, but not huge. So we had room for guests. And as usual, we invited my sister. Now, my sister before only lived 200 miles away. And in the previous 4 years of living 200 miles away, we'd gotten together every single year. She's wonderful. I adore her. Her whole family and my family get along great. It was just a perfect match. And so every year they'd come down and we'd spend Thanksgiving together. And it was just the greatest of traditions. What I didn't know is if it was so great of a tradition that now that we'd moved an additional 600 miles away, now it was 850 miles instead of 250 miles.
Well, I mean,
is the tradition going to survive the distance?
I mean, you could have made it if you got up and went to her one of these years. That's a thing.
Yes, and that's true, except for the fact that we'd also made a tradition that we always went to their house for the 4th of July. And so it was just a trade-off.
Well, now that they've come to your house for Thanksgiving, you are stuck, sir. You are committed to 4th of July, and you will look like a terrible person if you don't go.
Yes, but you sound like you're being tricky. She still lives 20 miles away from my wife's mother, so there's plenty of reason for us to go to that part of the world.
Are you sure? Your mother-in-law
Yes.
is a plus on this side?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
So we invited her, and then while we were planning to basically accommodate 5 additional guests to our household of 7 for a grand total of 12 and all the sleeping and living arrangements associated with that, my wife was contacted by her sister. Wait, I said 12. I meant 13. 13 at this point. My wife's sister, the one who is currently in active chemotherapy and had recently gotten a mastectomy for breast cancer, contacted her and said, we're interested in coming to your house for Thanksgiving. And of course, we're not going to say no to that. We would love to have them come. We just have to figure out how to accommodate 18 people instead of 13 people.
Tents, obviously. Rental RVs, hotels down the street. I mean, there are options here.
You got it. We actually employed all of the above. There was a tent in the yard. We used a hotel down the street. The weather's nice here in Louisiana. It was great. More the merrier. Everybody came. Every time I thought I was making too much food, it was not too much food.
There's never a thing as too much food on Thanksgiving.
And party games galore because with that many people around, great crowds for playing party games. So we had an 8-man Magic the Gathering draft in the Adventures of Forgotten Realms set.
I'm so jealous that you get to do full drafts.
Oh man, it was fantastic. We played all those games, so everything was great. That was I could talk more about it later. How about you, Josh? What was your experience for Thanksgiving this year?
Thanksgiving this year, well, Maricopa County, which is where I live, is the number 1 spot in the United States for positive COVID test results. Woo!
What?
We're number 1. Yeah. No, we're still at 5,000 plus cases a day and have been since August. So
holy cow.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Did you allow that to kill your tradition of forgetting something and going to Fry's grocery store on the morning of Thanksgiving, having a beer with your dad and your brother?
So we're not there yet. So last year I suffered like Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving was just our family, and I love my family, I really do, but I love Thanksgiving so much. And
didn't you have your brother-in-law come over though? I think Jason came over.
Man, you're better at remembering my family details than I am because probably maybe he came over. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But this year we decided that my wife and I are both vaccinated. The kids had their first shot, and they were going to have their second shot. They had their second shot yesterday, which was a couple days after Thanksgiving. So anyway,
good.
There was and we put mitigation in place where, like my family, we wore masks and we separated ourselves during the actual meal portion of it. And so we took proper steps, and so we felt comfortable enough to have like a more traditional Thanksgiving setup. And so my parents decided to host because they have a better house for hosting big events like this. And so I showed up at my parents' house the night before to prep the turkey for a couple hours. And then I went home and I slept, and then I came back over to their house at 5:30 in the morning to get everything going because
of course you did. Now to prep the turkey for what cooking method? There's baking, there's frying. What'd you do?
oh, listen, I smoke. I slow smoke my turkey over low heat all day, all Thanksgiving.
Thus the 5:30 arrival.
That's the
time.
5:30, the dark 30 arrival time. And it was so windy, I had to start the fire in the garage because it kept blowing out my charcoal. Like it was a whole thing. So I'm in my jacket and my long pants, and I'm like trying to get my charcoal burning at 5:30 in the morning. My parents are asleep in their house. I'm trying to be super quiet so I don't wake them or their dogs up. And anyway, I got that going. As soon as that was done, I started on like the snacks and like all the things that you're going to munch on throughout the day while everything else is getting ready. We put
the not too salty Chex Mix.
Not too salty Chex Mix. We did the veggie tray. I also got the first batch of cider into the crock pot because that takes 4 hours to cook. So we did one batch for like the afternoon, like it was done like right about the afternoon time. And then we did another batch that was ready right for dinner.
All right, I got a question for you. I think this is the appropriate time to talk about it. What do you believe is the ideal time of day to target for the initiation of the actual feast?
So my personal belief is that Thanksgiving is a day where you have a light breakfast, you skip lunch, and you have an early feast. So
4 p.m.?
We were shooting for between 4 and 5. We got everything out and served at like right about 5. And that's when we were like no doubt about it. It's food time. But again, we had like the snacks and things that were out. And my wife came over at about 1 o'clock, and she brought all the desserts, and some of that was like little cupcakes and delicious pecan bars that she made somehow that we laid out for snacks. Oh, it was so good. We had like 3 different kinds of pie.
Wait, you ate pie before you ate turkey? No, that's not allowed.
We didn't eat the pie. No, we ate everything else, like the pecan bars and the cupcakes and stuff like beforehand. They were okay. Side note: they were apple pie cupcakes, where she took cupcakes and then cored out the middle, and then took little pieces of apple and cooked them with brown sugar and some other stuff, and then put that stuff in the middle of these cupcakes, and then did a cinnamon frosting.
Oh man!
Oh, they were so good. And then in the middle of all this, my dad it was probably about 1 o'clock, and I say, "Hey, Pops, if we need anything for the meal, now's the time because I'm going to start getting busy here in a second." And he goes, "Well, obviously we need ice." And so we piled into my car and drove off.
Is the feigned secrecy part of the game, or are the women not in on it really?
Oh, no, everybody's in on it. But but it's part of the tradition to have like the lamest excuse of all time to like leave the house. Yes.
I love it.
What's funny is because of COVID, the actual bar in our local Fry's is closed. And I know. What do you do? Well, my dad's like,
you sent me a photo of it, and I thought you were there, but you were showing that it was closed.
That was somewhere. No, that wasn't even Fry's.
Oh. So
we had a backup plan. My dad has his favorite dive bar that's right over next to an Albertsons called Azul's, and we went over to Azul's, and Azul's was closed. And so then we had to drive. Like, well, we can't just give up on this.
So COVID is complicating your Thanksgiving traditions.
Clearly. Like, this is, again, for the second year in a row. Ugh. But we drove down the street to, I don't know the name of the place. It's like O'Malley's, or it's some, like, Irish sports bar or something. And they were open. There was no cars in front of it. So we had our doubts, but the door was unlocked. And so I was wearing my festive turkey hat. And we went in and we had a couple of beers. And then we forgot the ice. Oh,
what kind? What is an appropriate beer for Thanksgiving? Did you just go with the Blue Moon, or did you get something like special?
I asked the lady what was on tap, and I immediately started getting yelled at by my dad. "Oh, you know what you're going to get. Why are you asking her all these silly questions?" I'm like, well, they have whatever. It's fine. I'll take a Blue Moon, the big one. And so I had that. But at the same time, like I like to think I know I have a handful of craft beers that I will drink. IPAs have taken over, which is a scourge, and it's terrible. But like if she told me like they had Eau Traverse, I'd have been all over that. Eau Traverse is a beer brewed by Sierra Nevada. It is a sour mash. I've never had any beer like it, but it is like it's got like a sour vinegary taste, and I like vinegar, and so that's like if I can ever find it again, that's what I would drink.
Okay.
All of this beside the point. We had our festive Thanksgiving traditional beers. Took a couple of pictures, forgot to buy ice, and then went back to preparing the meal.
Yeah, your dad texted me out of nowhere and sent me a couple of the pictures, so I'll post one of those to the photo album.
He was so my parents are avid listeners to the podcast. Mom, Dad, hi, thank you for listening, and they love you. Like they hate it when I talk, but every time you say anything, they love it to death.
I love them too. All right, so you guys targeted 4, you got on by 5. That sounds reasonable.
It was good. Yeah, the turkey came off the smoker, and it was. I smoked it all day in cherry wood, and I paid particular. I had the smoke going hot and heavy the whole time. It was really, really good, that turkey this year.
Yeah.
I had my siblings bring various side dishes. My mom was in charge of a couple of things. Like it was a feast. It was a proper Thanksgiving feast, and we executed my life hack where I came over with 12 large Tupperware containers that were fresh bought and washed from the store. And everybody had a full assortment of all of the leftovers to take home with them.
That's great. Okay, so because my sister was traveling from 800 miles away, and my wife's sister was traveling from over 2,000 miles away, the probability of them bringing cooked items with them was none. So everything that was going to get cooked for this feast had to happen at my house. So we had to plan this out. So and they were traveling home on Thanksgiving Day, which meant that we had to have the feast a day early, which actually turned out to be an advantage.
Oh, okay.
Now, I would take a bit of a tangent. When you were still in the military, did you ever have a moment where you wanted to possess an object, an item, a capability, but you didn't because of the impermanence of everything? Like, did you own your smoker before you left the military?
No, I didn't.
That's kind of where we're at. We bake turkey, not because I don't like smoked turkey or think that's a good option, but because I don't want to own a smoker yet.
Because you have to haul it from place to place when you PCS.
Right. So that's the kind of thing you get when you feel like you've settled down somewhere. You own a house and you're not going anywhere.
I will say the amount of stuff we're accumulating since I've gotten out of the military has increased exponentially.
Yeah.
I always used to wonder, why do all these houses have so many closets? Nobody has all this much stuff. Now every one of our closets is packed to the gills, Ben.
Right. You've become... You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. So I had watched Alton Brown, who is one of my favorite celebrity chefs. I love his scientific and methodical approach to cooking. And he advocated for brining a turkey if you're going to bake it. So we tried this 3 years ago, and it turned out pretty successfully. So we did it again last year, even though I wasn't there. That was documented on the podcast a year ago. And my sister came this year, and we brined the turkey. Now, I got up early in the morning, as you do. I because of the size of the bird, it was a 20-pound bird, and I was estimating 4.5 to 5 hours of cook time. And we were targeting like 1 to 2 p.m. for the mealtime. And so I got the turkey, and we'd kept it in a cooler outside, and it was in a bag with all of this salt brine in, probably like 2 gallons of fluid.
Okay.
And it was double bagged and tied off. And so I set it on the counter, and I untied the first bag, and I set the roasting pan next to me.
Uh-oh.
And then I untied the second.
Oh, no. Ben, it's liquid in a bag. You can't just set that on the counter.
I untied the second bag, and then the tidal wave of salt water came all down the front of the counters, and I could see it going into like the silverware drawer and the.
We need to have a new segment on the podcast called "Foreseeable Disasters That Happen to Ben."
Oh man, so salty turkey blood tidal wave. Everyone's still asleep, so I'm like, it's like that. It's like when you fall down, trip on a curb or something. You look around and no one saw you, and it's like it never happened. Except I've still got everything.
The evidence is everywhere.
I'm like, okay, I got to get this turkey in the oven, and now I know what I'm doing for the next 20 minutes. So I got the turkey in the oven, and now I'm cleaning up this. And my sister put brown sugar in the water. So all day, and somebody walked through the kitchen, and they would do that. They get that look on their face when their feet stick to the floor, and they go,
"It's a little weirdly sticky in here."
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what that's all about.
Man, if I was you in that situation, I'd have just started speaking really loudly. Boy, I wish there was 8+ children in this house with bath towels that could come in here and fix this problem for me.
So I tried to clean it up, but it took a while. So that was, luckily, I'll say that was probably the worst cooking disaster. Did you have any cooking disasters this year?
Did I have any cooking disasters this year? No, because like you're talking about with Alton Brown being methodical and scientific, like I took everything into account beforehand. Like there was nothing that was not unplanned for.
Yeah, well, except for the wind.
Well, there was the wind, but I had an alternative. I had a solution to that after a couple of minutes. This is why I brought a flathead shovel with me when I was going to start, when I was going to do the smoker, because I set up the charcoal that I was going to start with on the flathead shovel so I could easily
Is your
transport
smoker
it.
self-contained enough that high winds wouldn't like cause it to be burn too hot?
Once I got everything in there, yes. And then everything is contained. The only way that air gets in there is from the very, very bottom, and it has to be pulled in through like heat induction. So it's not a problem once I got everything started. But as as proof of concept,
man.
I am sharing my screen right now.
Spreadsheet.
Yes.
Okay. You make fun of me as the one who makes graphics and charts, but listeners, you got to understand, Josh is the data man. Holy cow. So, okay, it looks like this is a what day you need to start cooking it, who's going to cook it, how long it takes to cook it, and when you need to start in order for it to all come together at the right time. Is that what this chart is?
That is what this is. This is a combination of the list of the dishes that we're going to have, the ingredients we needed to purchase, who was going to be responsible for each one, how long it was going to take to do each step of the preparation of said dish, and rolled all up at the bottom is how long or when I needed to start, essentially.
Nice. Okay, so I got a question. What about cranberry sauce? I get that, but man, that takes up a crucial burner at a key time. That could be done like 3 days in advance. You don't need to do that the day of.
We made, you're right, it could be done well in advance, but I wanted fresh cranberry sauce. The only person that even touched the cranberry sauce is my wife. She likes fresh cranberry sauce. And I just did it like at a very low point in the middle of the day when nothing else was cooking. And once it was prepared, I threw it in the fridge for a couple hours.
Nicole, I want you to know I appreciate this about you. Okay, I think I'm the only one that touched the cranberries as well, but I love them so much. I think they just make everything so much better in that meal.
You see,
I put it all over the place.
Again, goes back to the salt, the salt taste buds in my mouth. 100% gravy guy over here. Gravy on everything.
Yeah, gravy's good too, but the cranberries go as well. Okay, so I had 18 people at the house. We made 3 dozen rolls, like 8 pies, all the good stuff, and it was magical. Josh, it was magical. So we had a new oven that we hadn't cooked a turkey in before, and the turkey got done way earlier than we thought.
Ooh, like a convection oven.
Yes, it was a convection oven, and it took like 3 hours, and the little thermometer popped down. I'm like, crap, we got to take this out. So I took it out and set it on the counter, and I'm kind of standing there with my hips on. By this time, my wife's sister's family had arrived, and my everybody was starting to get up. Now, this is interesting because you were talking about the plan to like have a light breakfast and have snacks out, but this was at the point where like no one had even eaten anything yet. It was like 11 a.m. No one had eaten a thing. The turkey's done. We've prepped most of the sides, and we've just got like 3 sides left, like the green bean casserole, potatoes and gravy, and just kind of set out the place settings and get everything going. So I look around at my team, and I'm like, all right, team, can we get dinner on by 12? And I'm like, let's do this. So everyone sprung into action. There was like 8 grown-ups, and just everybody was working all at once. The kitchen's big enough that it can accommodate that many people. 12 o'clock on the dot, we were saying the prayer. Everybody had Thanksgiving dinner for breakfast.
That's outstanding, because then that's a long enough period of time where you can either nibble on it for the remainder of the day or have another Thanksgiving dinner late in the evening.
Absolutely. And that's it. And then we went nuts on the pie at like 6 o'clock. It was great. I love it. What a great holiday.
Dude, that sounds wonderful. I'm so glad you got to enjoy that. Now, I have to jump in with a piece of follow-up. It turns out you were absolutely correct. The Detroit Lions played on Thanksgiving this year.
Yes. And lost, as per tradition. I think it was like 14-13 to the Bears.
It was close, though. Closer than it had any right to be.
Now, Thanksgiving being America's holiday, the football team that likes to call themselves America's football team, the Dallas Cowboys, wanted to get in on the tradition, and so they also try to have a Thanksgiving Day game every year, and they also followed the tradition and lost as well.
Dude, what's funny is they just legalized sportsbook betting via the internet in my state, Arizona. This just happened in the last election cycles.
Louisiana's doing the same thing. How did that happen in both states at the same time? Weird. Why can't we get rid of daylight savings time too?
Oh, seriously. All right. If you are hearing my voice right now, daylight savings time needs to go away. We had a problem with daylight savings time setting up the podcast. No, we're not going. We're not doing the daylight savings time again. But I'll say this, like with the whole sportsbook betting thing, they're doing all of the things that big businesses do or big casinos do to suck you in, and they're giving you like, oh, it's $100, absolutely risk-free. Like if you sign up, some of these sites, you sign up and you give them like $5, they give you...
Tell me you bet against the Lions.
I didn't bet anything. No, Ben, listen, I am not a gambler when it comes to this kind of nonsense, okay? I am not that guy. I play games that have statistical advantages in my favor if I execute flawlessly. Those are the gambling things that I play. I will never touch a slot machine. I will never go near a roulette table. Not anymore. Not after what happened when I was 21. But cards, specific card games, like those are things I do. But my mother has always loved sportsbook and like off-track betting and all that stuff.
Really? Your mom?
Oh, she loves it. Loves it to death.
Okay.
I remember wonderful times we would have where I was too young to gamble, but we would go to like a restaurant or something for lunch that had off-track betting, and then she would give me a newspaper and have me crunch the numbers and say who she should bet on in the race that was going to start in 10 minutes. Anyway, she is all about this, like, and she's still playing with the casino's money or whatever because she signed up and she got that big chunk of risk-free investment or whatever. And we had long conversations where I was trying to explain to her. She's like, "Oh, and you get this thing. They do a halftime boost where I get a notification. It says, okay, if you think X is going to happen in the second half, press here and you can bet like $5 and win 25." And I'm like, mother.
Whoa, they've turned it into microtransactions?
Yes. And I'm like, mother, if they want you, like they would not offer you a bet if it was not in their favor. That is how this works. Like the only bets you should be taking are the ones where you bet $10 and win $1. Those are the bets you should take because those are probably a sure thing. But no, she loves all of this stuff, and she was betting on all the different football games that were happening. And this actually added to our Thanksgiving in a weird way because I was there cooking, and it was the halftime for, I think it was the Lions game. And then that's when we were getting up to go. And my mom was like, "Oh, I got a halftime boost if the quarterback throws a touchdown pass in the third quarter." And they weren't even set to receive the ball. I'm like, that's kind of a bad bet. She's like, "I'm going for it anyway." And she bet on it. But then when my dad and I left and we went to the sports bar, obviously they had the Lions game on. And we were watching, and then we got to like get the excitement to get in on it, and they did. Like she actually won her ridiculous like bonus bet for $25 because against all odds, the guy did the thing that he was supposed to do.
Now, there's an interesting aspect to what you just said that I've realized with the onset and popularity of fantasy football, and that is it takes everyday people who normally just have a loyalty to one single local team, and it turns their interest into something much broader. Now you care about games where the stakes are low. You care about games that aren't your local team and stuff like that. And I don't know, it seems like it's not necessarily a bad thing for sports that now all of a sudden you're caring about just one player to do really well or games that you normally wouldn't be interested in. I kind of like it.
I asked my mom about that specifically a couple of weeks ago. And I'm a Cardinals fan, and my wife and I watch the Cardinals religiously. And Ben, you're lucky you rescheduled to a Sunday where they have a bye week, or else we wouldn't be recording right now. Okay. But my mom, I asked her, like, so do you like watch all the games? She's like, yeah, I get to bet on the games, and then it gives her personal stakes in what's going on. And so it's like I'll watch football on Monday or Thursday just randomly if it's on, just to fill the time, but I don't have anything invested in the game. And so if I walk away from it or start scrolling through Reddit on my phone, who cares? But my mom she's in. Oh, she's all in because player X has got to get so many yards in order for her to win her bet this time.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess if I ever want to get into fantasy football, I'll ask your mom for advice.
No, she bets. She's not doing fantasy football. These are two different things, Ben. She's not.
All right. We still got to get to Christmas and New Year's, but there's one of the tangent I want to take, and that is when my family moved to the UK, we kind of decided that we were going to do this weird thing where there were the American holidays, and we wanted to try to find a way to uphold our American traditions surrounding the American holidays while we were living in England.
The correct holidays. You wanted to uphold the correct traditions in the old country.
Well, it is a bit cheeky for us to observe Independence Day the way that we did. I don't know if I ever told you about the incident with the neighbors and the fireworks, but I'll save that one for another time. we decided we also wanted to uphold Thanksgiving. And so we would have the feast, but because no family could, or at least was able to those times, able to come see us, we would invite our British friends over and then kind of encompass them in the tradition of just being grateful for the bounty and good people in our lives.
Did you have to explain like the Pilgrims and the first Thanksgiving and the lies we tell ourselves about the corn?
The colonies have grown a bit since the olden times, and most British people tend to be pretty switched on to American culture. They know what's going on. They're not like Thanksgiving. What's that? So we invited some of our closest friends over and had a big feast, and it was a hit. Like, it was great. So each year we were there. We invited some friends over, and I still have one friend that I made over there that raves about our Thanksgiving dinner like every time I see her. So yeah, that was a good time. If you're ever going to go live in a foreign country, I recommend that as a thing.
Try not to do it in a Muslim country that's currently celebrating Ramadan. That's not the best time to do a Thanksgiving feast. Throwing that out there.
Okay, so football's over. We're almost eating through all the leftovers. I don't know about you. We've almost eaten through all of them at our house. We've turned our eyes towards the next in the series of holidays. Take it away on Christmas, Josh.
So this is the thing. I said this before, and I'm going to say it again. There is no Christmas in my household until the day after Thanksgiving. So what that does, though, Ben, is that just dams up everybody's joy for Christmas in my sphere of influence until the day after Thanksgiving, and then it comes upon me in a tidal wave of Christmas, like wanting it to be gone. We've already watched a Christmas movie. The day after Thanksgiving, I was conscripted into putting up our Christmas lights. All of our Christmas lights are already up. Yesterday, I was conscripted to take down out of storage our Christmas tree and all the ornaments and things. And now, you said...
Now, the term conscription infers involuntary and against your will, like...
As you are the Debbie Downer for your family for Halloween, I am the Debbie Downer in my family for Christmas.
You still did it.
I got down the Christmas tree and all the ornaments, and I set them out, and then I went on a 5-mile run with the full expectation that it would all be done behind my back, and I wouldn't have to lift a finger to decorate the tree.
Okay.
I'm
obviously you got back and they were still waiting for you, and then you put them up.
No. I got back and I was told to put the. We don't have a star. We have a snowflake that we put on top of our tree, but that's only because I'm the only one that can reach it.
So, have you plumbed the psychological depths of why you're the Grinch who stole Christmas?
I am
like,
okay.
What? Who? Show me on this doll of Santa Claus.
You, sir,
where you were hurt.
You
Josh.
are the master of false dichotomy. Okay, because on a spectrum from Kris Kringle to the Grinch, I'm not the Grinch. Okay, I'm just in the middle where it's like Christmas. Nah, it's fine. It's another holiday. Like, I'm most excited about my wife making a beef Wellington. That's our Christmas tradition, is she's going to make a delicious beef Wellington for Christmas dinner.
Okay, so that brings up one of the topics I want to touch on, and that is what's in your mind the difference between a Christmas feast and a Thanksgiving feast?
So for the longest time, they were identical to me because I love Thanksgiving.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And so
okay, you were just like, but what about second Thanksgiving?
Exactly. My family, the rest of my family, are 100% on honey-baked ham. Thanksgiving is turkey, Christmas is honey-baked ham, and I have never cared for ham. And so in recent years, it has been my tradition, where they have a honey-baked ham and all of the same Thanksgiving sides. I roll in with whatever turkey dish that I prepared for myself in advance, and that's what I eat, along with all of the Thanksgiving sides, and just have second Thanksgiving. That was the longest time. But then my wife, 3 years ago, I think, we were watching one of the Great British Baking shows or whatever, and we saw the beef Wellington. I'm like, that looks delicious. And so we went all in for Christmas on a beef Wellington. Like, we went to a butcher, not the grocery store, an actual like third-party butcher, and paid an exorbitant amount of money for a perfectly prepared piece of meat that she transformed into this, what you probably, having lived in the UK, think is a normal Friday night, into this once-a-year delicacy that we only get to partake in on the most sacred of holidays, according to some people. And
yeah.
To this day, I will say the first beef Wellington my wife made was one of the best things that I have ever eaten.
Yeah, great. And it hasn't failed your expectations on repeat. She's gotten better at it.
Oh yes, and it's so good.
Now, since you mentioned ham, we did a ham and turkey on Thanksgiving. We do every time. And one of my favorite things has been with the leftover ham is to make ham and potato cream based soup. Oh, so good. It never lasts more than a day. It's so good. All right, so let me give you my perspective on Christmas, because it was always my favorite growing up, and it's changed to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving just feels like an event, but Christmas feels like a season, and I think part of it is because the focus is around gift giving, whereas Thanksgiving's around this feast. And a feast happens on a day, but gift giving's kind of a process that you got to go through.
Okay.
And rightfully, I think you've observed that it's been overly commercialized for that reason. Because you're going to spend a lot more money on Christmas than you are on Thanksgiving. That's where the retailers are going to make their money, and more people than just the grocery stores.
I mean, the biggest thing you see about retailers for Thanksgiving is the day after. It's Black Friday. You've got to go get your shopping on for Christmas.
Now, it wasn't. It has only come to be called that in my lifetime. Like, I remember when it used to not be called that.
Oh, really? It was just the Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was just that day, Friday after
Well,
Thanksgiving.
now we have Black Friday. We have Small Business Saturday, which is the next day. You're supposed to shop.
Cyber Monday.
Cyber Monday. Like, apparently nobody does shopping on the Lord's Day, but on Monday, it's Cyber Monday. There's going to be some deals out tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you participate in all that?
No, I mean, if I have major purchases I'm going to make, I do remember buying my current TV on Black Friday online because it was, ridiculously marked down the way that they should be. But I'm not going to get out of my house and go line up at Best Buy at all hours of the night on Thanksgiving to get ready for Black Friday. That seems ridiculous.
That's what they want you to do, though.
That's how the man wins, Ben.
Well, don't give in. Somebody's still out there doing it, although I don't watch the local news anymore, so I don't know what that looks like.
Well, I want to go back to your observation. You said Christmas is like a season. So what's interesting is that for me, it never has been. In Arizona, growing up in Arizona, Christmas is not a season because if you look outside, it's not winter. There's no winter in Arizona. This is the same as it is all year round. It's brown with some scraggly bushes that all have thorns. The wildlife basically.
That's interesting. So the weather is a big influence on that.
Yeah. It's still warm enough. Like, it's still in the mid 70s. Like, this isn't. I hear all these songs and all these talking about, oh, we're going to go sledding or it's going to be a white Christmas and there's all the snow days. None of that has ever existed at any point through my childhood. And so I don't associate Christmas with this wintry, like, stay inside bundled up feelings.
That's understandable. How must it feel to live in Australia where it's like the middle of the summer?
Decorating palm trees. That sounds great.
Right? Okay. So did you do like advent calendars when you were a kid?
Yes.
Where it was just a countdown that wasn't necessarily related to the whether or not it was wintry weather?
We do have advent calendars because kids look forward to Christmas. My kids inside, they have advent calendars, but they're not counting down to this magical Christmas time holiday. They're counting down to the day they get to open all their presents.
Right. So you guys play the Santa game with the kids?
We do. My wife didn't want to back in the day because they didn't do Santa when she was a kid, but I did Santa when I was a kid, and I think it's a fun lie to tell your kids. My son...
You prevailed?
We prevailed, so we've done the Santa game. My son he's dropped a couple of hints. Like, we had to have the talk with him. My wife had the talk with him just today about, hey, keep that no Santa crap to yourself.
Yeah. Okay. I've established on past editions of Bad at Magic the whole experience with us and the Santa game.
Yeah, you ruined it for everyone. You horrible Grinch. You called me the Grinch.
How about music and caroling? I mean, I get that there's not weather in Arizona, but people put up the lights and the radio stations that you listen to start playing different things than you used to listen to.
We have a radio station in Arizona, 99.9, that after Thanksgiving all the way through Christmas plays nothing but Christmas music all day, every day. And so that turns into a preset on our radios if we're ever in the car driving someplace with the kids, and we turn on the Christmas music and jam out to all the carols.
Don't you feel like that influences the perception of it being a season?
Maybe, but I don't know. I've never felt like it's a season.
So your lights are up. Are they on right now?
Probably. It's a weekend. We're off peak hours and they're all LED, so I don't really pay that close attention to it. But we have them all on switches, so we can turn them all off whenever I feel like.
Yeah. All right. Well, our house was still on. I know we still had 11 guests in the house until just a few hours ago, so we haven't quite transitioned to the decorating, but I think that'll be tomorrow.
You need to have that free labor. It's like, all right, y'all ate my food. Now you're going to help put up my lights.
Yeah. I've never been a put up lights outside person. We just put them up inside since that's where we live. I'm decorating for us, not for other people.
I don't know when it started. Our house in New Mexico. My wife was deployed, and I was at home decorating it by myself, and I just bought a bunch of lights. And every year we've just accumulated more lights. And so now we just have these giant totes full of exterior Christmas lights that every year I swear to myself I'm going to draw up a diagram exactly how I hung everything and where each strand goes. And every year when I'm going to tear them down, I say screw it and throw them all back in the box. So I'm left hanging next year. I just got to make it up again.
Yeah. There must be a name for that, but I don't know what it is. There's lots of traditional decorations that all are supposed to have some kind of symbolic significance that then we just forget. But it's because we're so eclectic about these things. None of these have a single point of origin. They're from all over the place. Pagans and Celtics and just Christians.
Well, hang on a second. If we're talking about the actual origins of Christmas, this was the transition from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire when the Christians started becoming a real thing and we need to incorporate them or die. And so they aligned the birth of Jesus, which I take is sometime in April, from what I hear. They incorporated that into one of the pagan festival of lights, or one of their fertility holidays, or whatever. One of the big pagan wintry holidays, and kind of slammed them together as the two biggest holidays of the season for both religions to try to make the transition smoother.
Yep, and in the 4th century A.D., the Catholic Church got together and voted on the birth of Christ, and it became that day forevermore.
Gotta love the votes for birthdays. Can I vote and change my birthday to a better time of the year?
And you're right about that just being two single things becoming one at that point, but there's so many others. The wreaths didn't originate from either of those cultures at that time. The trees tradition, that also didn't come from that time.
That was a German tradition, I think, with the trees.
Exactly. Garlands, mistletoe, holly, poinsettias, those are Mexican plant. The lights and candles, all those things it's just a big mix of stuff, and it all got thrown together. And then at some point Santa Claus came in on the whole thing, and we just mixed it all together, and it comes out the way, it's sounding like Mariah Carey and smelling like pine boughs and peppermint.
We have those smelly pine cones that you buy in the big bag at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And you set that on the counter. It just smells like spices all year.
Yeah, so you got the sound of Christmas, you got the smell of Christmas, you get the sights of Christmas. How is this? I know it's not snow, but how does that not make it feel like a season to you?
I don't know. I've just never been big on the Christmas season. Maybe I was different as a kid, but nowadays it's just December.
What about some of the other things, like school plays and concerts? Are your kids practicing the music, and you got to go to the school, and they all dress up in Santa hats and sing Jingle Bells?
So this might be a new thing. I'm glad you brought this up because I'm super excited about it. For the Thanksgiving play, I remember my son was in 1st grade, and we had to go to the gym at the elementary school in the middle of the day on a random day.
Did they pretend to be pilgrims with buckles on their hats and shoes?
Half of them did that. The other half were Indians, and then some of them were turkeys, and they sang this adorable song that rhymed, and it was just great. Albuquerque was a turkey, and he's feathered and he's fine. And it's the best Thanksgiving song ever. But here's the thing. I still had to go down there in the middle of the day on a random work day.
Right.
Well, this year, my daughter is in 1st grade, and so we were fully expecting to get hauled down there for their Thanksgiving festival. No, Ben, we got a text message. Oh, the Thanksgiving play, or the pageant, or whatever, for these grades will be happening at these times live on Facebook, and then the video will be available on the website after that.
What?
Yeah.
Webcast?
Live webcast with a recording that you could access later.
That's outstanding.
Right? This is going to revolutionize the whole having to go to kids' plays nonsense.
Oh my gosh, Josh. I still get PTSD from the worst talent show I've ever been to in my life at a kid's school. Oh my gosh. It was interminable and horrific.
Because kids don't have talent. You're 7. You don't have talent yet.
Okay, so let me rapid fire a few other Christmas traditions. Does your family send out Christmas cards?
We do. We send out holiday cards. So we've already taken the picture. We've had them printed. We are updating our address list as we speak.
Okay. Wow. That must be one of you two holding that together, because neither Alicia nor I can manage to keep that one. We tried for a few years when we first got married, and it just fell apart, and we don't do it.
My wife is very big on pictures, and this is an excuse for us to get formal family portraits taken every year, and then we can stick them on our Christmas cards and then just have them. And she has a spreadsheet with all the different addresses of the people that we've ever known, and I don't know how, but somehow she keeps it up to date. So, I mean, kudos to Nicole.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, it's nice now that we carry around like cell phones with us, that we don't ever change the number when we move from place to place, so that you can kind of keep track of people that way. But people's physical addresses change all the time.
Yeah, you got a text message from me on Thanksgiving Day. Hey, what's your new address?
Hey, what's your address? It's funny. I just give it to you, and I'm not like, what was that all about? Oh, I should have realized it was a Christmas card list.
Exactly.
One tradition that I absolutely love in Europe that I think they're trying to start in America, but it just never catches on, and I think it's geographical, is Christmas markets. Are you familiar with the tradition of Christmas markets?
Is that like a farmer's market?
Kinda. It's more like a flea market.
I have bad memories of flea markets, man.
Most towns in Europe have a very traditional old town square, which is where things used to happen, festivals and dances and all that kind of stuff. So there'd be someplace right in the heart of downtown where there's a little bit of wide open space. And then they just fill it up with shops and stalls that are all Christmas themed. Decorations, beautiful crafts, delicious things to eat, cups of hot chocolate, seasonal dishes, everything. And everywhere we went in Europe, these happened, and they are magical. Like if you want to travel to Europe and you have ideas of things you want to do, can I recommend, listeners, if you want to go to Europe, go anywhere like during basically the right around from Thanksgiving to, like, they stopped doing them about 2 weeks before Christmas, so you got to go early. But go to a traditional Christmas market. The ones in Italy, the ones in Germany, the ones in England, all were fantastic. They're just magical.
The only thing like even remotely like that I've heard of in America is for Oktoberfest. They'll set up like fairgrounds and stuff with stalls and booths and do that kind of thing.
It's geographical.
Yeah, no.
Like I said, we don't have a town square that could accommodate something like this. We could try it, but it just doesn't work out.
I'll tell you right now, I'm all in. Like, that sounds wonderful. I would totally go to like a big open town square like you're talking about, with like booths of vendors with hot chocolate and games and dancing and maypoles. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was great. And one other tradition, just to add to the list, and for kind of an unfortunate reason, is parades. They have there wasn't really a Halloween parade, but Thanksgiving. So in my chart, I'm making like Christmas and Thanksgiving get parades. New Year's, I guess, not so much Halloween. But there was that horrible tragedy that happened in Wisconsin this week. Did you hear about that?
No. Oh no, the guy drove through the parade or whatever.
Yeah. Some guy in an SUV went through a parade and hit like 60 people and killed like 8 of them. It was horrific. That's
a guy that should go straight to the electric chair. Not to get too political or anything.
They've got him in custody, but yeah, what a tragedy.
While we're talking about parades, let's bring it back from the dark side here. I was watching my mother came out as soon as she woke up, and I was there making food, and she's like, "Dude, why didn't you turn on the parade?" I'm like, "Because you were sleeping." And she turns on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade.
Uh-huh.
And I couldn't help but I'm making food, and I look up and I see this parade, snippets of it, and I couldn't help but think to myself, why? Why do we do this? This is one of the dumbest things. Nobody likes going to a parade. Nobody likes. I've been in many parades. Like I've done parades throughout my entire adolescence. But why? This is the weirdest thing to me.
That's a good question, and I think the fact that you can't even fathom an answer means it's talking about the generation gap. You know, last week we talked about the names of the generations and stuff, and I come from the generation where I felt the transition. I feel like I can articulate the reason for it, but it does feel like a thing that's a legacy of the past that maybe will reach a point where we just no longer put the effort into it.
No, it'll be the Macy's Thanksgiving Day TikTok Championship or something.
Part of it is because it is like the singular opportunity for some of those groups that are involved in the parade to get attention. Like the Shriners or the like car owners club or whatever.
I'm thinking back to like actual old school ticker tape parades, like a VE or V.
Now that I get. Like I was in Tampa when they won the Super Bowl, and they, went through Tampa and
But that was a spontaneous, like an entire city like our entire state really, like all agreeing to have a party all at exactly the same time. That makes sense.
Let's all gather and cheer for the victors.
That warrants a parade. Winning World War II in Europe, I feel like that's a party across the entire country. Everybody just leaves their houses, starts partying in the streets. That makes sense. But like an organized,
this is a fascinating topic. There's the spontaneous praise that happened because everybody wants to get together and be excited about something that happened, and then there's like the repetitive ones that we do on a schedule to observe an event.
Did you watch any of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade?
No, Josh, I haven't watched broadcast television in years.
Fair enough. Well, they have giant balloons of characters that haven't been popular in decades because it takes a lot of money to make one of these big balloons. And I'm not just going to throw it away because he's not popular anymore.
So it's still like Garfield the cat and the Pink Panther?
Yeah, and like Peanuts characters. Like Peanuts hasn't been topical for decades. Like they had a movie and everybody remembered Peanuts for a while, but then it was gone. Like why? What is all this for?
Okay, what was the most topical one you could think of? Was there like Stewie from Family Guy or something?
SpongeBob. The only one that I saw that I thought that could still maybe kind of relate to today was SpongeBob.
But he's been going for 20 years.
Right, exactly. So what are we doing here? Why?
All right, listeners, if you want to speak up in favor of parades, you can, but the Bad at Magic podcast sees no use for them.
I genuinely want somebody to make a good, strong case for parades to me. I really do.
I've marched in parades as a Boy Scout. I've marched in parades as a band member. I've marched in parades as an ROTC gun twirler. I've done all of that, and I still don't think it's a good idea. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm old and I enjoyed it when I was young and I had my chance. I wanted my parents to be there and watch me.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my parents used to make parade floats, and we'd be on the float and throw candy out at the people. You can't do that anymore. And then when I was in college, I was at the academy, and they would always have they'd want volunteers to make a cadet squadron to march through the parade. Yeah. And that was just a way to get off base for a day.
As a kid, I was in favor of parades because it was the only other time than Halloween I could get free candy.
Yeah, but you can't do candy anymore because all of the horrible things that people put into candy.
Yeah, well, now to add to the list, you could have Mad Men and SUVs. Okay, so that's all the traditions. Christmas is really universal. Whatever the mission of Christianity was to perpetuate itself throughout the world, aside from like a really, the predominantly Eastern religions or Muslim areas of the world, people at least understand and recognize it as going on. Unlike like American Thanksgiving or Halloween, which we established last time, was a bit less well observed. The word Christ Mass obviously comes from Catholic tradition of observing Mass on the day they picked as his birthday.
So I don't know if you realize this, but me personally, I don't celebrate Christmas.
I know, and you mentioned that you like to use the word X, and a fascinate as in Xmas.
Yeah, I always.
Sorry,
whenever I write it down, I always use Xmas. I'm so glad that you recognize that.
All right, but you're gonna love this. X is the Greek letter chi, which in Greek means Christos. So Xmas is actually still Christmas.
Oh, you rules lawyered me into celebrating Christmas. Damn you, Ben Rich.
Now, I assume you're familiar with the messianic narrative of Luke 2 in the New Testament of the baby Jesus and the manger and the star and the angels and the shepherds and all that stuff.
The traditional lore that surrounds the birth of Christ, yes.
Do your kids, have they ever done like a dress up in costume and reenact the nativity kind of thing?
Oh, no. No.
Like conscientious objectors?
No. Well, first of all, we don't belong to any religious organization that would do such a thing in our local.
And they don't do that at school?
No. And if, boy howdy, if they tried to do that at school, would I have something to say to the administration?
All right. Yeah, we talked about the date. That's not important. What foods are different for Christmas than Thanksgiving? What distinguishes them?
That our main protein, it goes from turkey to beef Wellington.
Okay, turkey to ham, that's one. What else?
Everything else
Desserts.
Everything else is identical.
No, it's not.
Exactly the same for me.
Fruitcake is a Christmas thing, even though nobody likes it. In the UK, they would have mince pies and pudding, Christmas pudding.
I will say
there's Christmas cookies.
I'm fascinated by the concept of a savory pie. I've always been a fan of savory things inside of I'm not the crust, the pie crust. What is that called? killing me. Pastry.
Flake pastry.
Oh, yes, thank you. Flaky pastry. That sounds wonderful. And I know that's a very European thing. And I would like to incorporate more of that into my life.
Yeah. In England, when they said pie, they usually meant something savory rather than sweet.
Wonderful.
Where we mean the opposite in the U.S.
Because screw you, old country England. We're our own. We're moving out. And we're changing our name.
We're going to be overweight to spite you.
Yeah, exactly.
Christmas cookies, definitely more Christmassy than Thanksgiving-y. Peppermint seems to be kind of a bit more Christmas-associated. Candy canes, all that kind of stuff. Cider, I guess you established as just kind of the appley harvest seasonal thing. Eggnog, I don't know if that's so much associated with Thanksgiving as it is with Christmas.
That eggnog is 100% a Christmas drink that people will... It can be non-alcoholic, but there's no point. It's bad. There's no point in drinking it if it's non-alcoholic. So that is...
I bought a half gallon and stuck it in the fridge, and I think I drank the whole thing myself. I don't know if anyone even tried it.
It's just... I mean, you just drink anything else. Like, there's no point unless you're going to booze it up.
All right. Well, speaking from a non-alcohol consuming person, I think it's just fine. There's a cake that they make in Italy called panettone that they also serve here that I've seen. It's just this real spongy cake, but when I say spongy, I don't mean in a good way. I mean like a chewy, nasty sponge. Don't eat it. It's gross. It's like the cake equivalent of fruitcake. We don't feast in my family on Christmas because Thanksgiving is a holiday where we travel to be with other people. That's the feast day. Christmas is like whatever. Get up early, open some gifts, have a bunch of snacks, and no other gatherings.
Well, let's be clear. Christmas Eve is the feast day. That's the day where you get together with everybody and you do the big cooking and everybody gets dressed up and hangs out. Well, dressed up. My family, we all dress in pajamas. We all have Christmas pajamas that we all go in. Yeah, that's a thing. But
dude, I want to be there for that.
Christmas Day is just you wake up, the parents are mildly hungover and stayed up way too late doing the Santa Claus lie, and the kids open all their presents and turn the living room into a minefield of wrapping paper and toys.
What are your traditions surrounding time of arrival? Getting up.
I've told my kids on no uncertain terms, if you wake me up before 7, I will end you. Like 7 a.m. and no earlier.
My kids turn into teenagers. They just sleep in now. But yeah, they used to get up kind of early.
I do remember that. I remember that transition where I was older and it was my sister that was still the young kid waking up the siblings. Like, wake up, it's Christmas. Like, oh, it'll be Christmas in another hour.
Yeah. When I don't know if we've talked about this before, but there's a marriage and family therapist who established something in a book series and some counseling surrounding what he calls the 5 love languages.
Right, yes. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that.
Yeah, okay, we've talked about it on the podcast. So one of the 5 love languages is giving gifts. I think we've mentioned that your wife is really good at that. That's one of her love languages.
Yes, she's very good at giving gifts.
I only have one kid that's their love language. Like, I gave her a gift like 3 years ago, and she still talks about it. It's her case for her cell phone. And she'll look at it and she'll go, Dad, this is so perfect. One of my friends complimented me on it today. And I realize what she's saying to me is, I appreciate this expression of your love for me, and it still reminds me of you.
Aw. Hopefully that's what they say. But yeah.
So definitely for her, I have to be conscious of that and put more effort into the gift giving because I don't want that there to be any misconceptions there. So the last thing I want to talk about for Christmas, and then we need to move on to New Year's, is what are the colors?
Christmas is green, red. Like, those are the colors of the decorations and stuff that you put up. But
yeah, green and red, white.
People associated white with, I was just going to say, white because of all the snow. There is no snow here, Ben. It's still tan. It's just tan as far as the eye can see in Arizona.
Yeah. Silver and gold, I guess, to a lesser extent. Bit.
Only because of Yukon Cornelius, my favorite Christmas character from the original Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. It's like, oh, I'm up here mining silver and gold. Gold! Love that guy.
Josh's favorite Christmas character. Yeah. All right. So that brings us to New Year's. Now, I want to pause that. I know you resisted it a little bit. That while there's kind of a season surrounding Halloween and a season surrounding Christmas, Thanksgiving is kind of singular on the feast, and I'd say New Year's is very singular on the day. So you have 2 seasonal holidays and 2 event holidays.
This is very true. New Year's cannot take place on any other day but December 31st / January 1st, and It really feels like a ramp down from the holiday season. It feels like the last hurrah before everybody just kind of goes back to their real life.
I like this. We're establishing this overarching theme of this 2-episode special on the holidays. So Halloween's when you start ramping up, and then New Year's is there to bring you back down and then go back to real life.
Well, that's kind of where the New Year's resolutions come from. All right, these are the goals I'm going to set myself to be productive going forward, because we all know we haven't been productive at all the last 2 full calendar months.
Yeah, and here's my plan to lose all the weight I put on with all that extra eating over those seasons. Okay, so New Year's, you got, what are some of the activities? You got the mass gatherings, fireworks, alcohol, resolutions, like you said, sports. That's where like the college football season comes to culmination. Parades again, the ball drop. Theme parks, whatever, just everybody getting together and celebrating another trip around the sun.
Yep, another lap. Good job, everyone. We made it.
Now, you mentioned that everyone agrees on this, but it wasn't quite in our lifetimes, but it's been as recently as 1941. There were still major countries in the world that hadn't synchronized their calendars to recognize the Julian calendar as the authoritative end of the calendar year.
You keep talking about other countries and their traditions like they matter. Ben, we're Americans. Like, this is what's important here.
Well, you hear sometimes people like, "Oh, it's Chinese New Year" or whatever, and you can see the holdouts.
Well, was it China on a lunar calendar?
Yeah, they try to sync it up with the lunar calendar, but because the lunar, cycle's like 28 days, and that does not divide evenly into 365 and a quarter, it's just problematic.
Well, they're also communists, so we don't care what they do.
Well, I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but they kind of go together like, hey, we're going to stick it out and do this the old way no matter what the rest of you guys are doing.
Which is, honestly, China has a very rich and deep culture, like way richer and deeper than our culture of sticking it to the man, which in this case is Britain. Like, you can track Chinese culture back thousands and thousands of years, which is honestly very cool. We don't have that. All we have is our boozy holidays where we all get tanked and say we're going to do these things that we are actually probably not going to do.
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy surrounding the adoption of the Gregorian calendar, the Julian calendar, and even at times in the past, the Julian calendar has celebrated New Year's on different days. Initially, it was March 1st, and then it was March 25th, and then it was Easter, and then it was September 21st, and then it was Christmas, and now it's December 31st, and that's where it's stuck.
I'm torn because I have never heard a fact that was at once so fascinating and so boring at the same time. Like, part of me wants to dive into like all the different decisions of the different dates the New Year was, and the other part of me could not care any less.
Yeah, that's kind of boring. Well, and there isn't just that. There's also the fact that, we have the numbers that have the Latin prefixes that correspond with, ordinal numbers, but then we stuck a couple of weird ones in the middle, and we go to 8, 9, and 10 for the 10th, 11th, and 12th months of the year. All that being said, talk to me about any family traditions you have related to New Year's.
Not really. Not for New Year's. New Year's is one of those things where I have young kids, so they're not gonna stay up for it. I remember when I was a kid, growing up in the suburbs, where they would do fireworks at midnight in our town that we grew up in. And so we would all pile up to the roof of our little house that we were living in at the time. And I do have fond memories of like laying out a blanket and like being cold, but like having like hot cocoa and stuff to drink, like just being chilly, waiting for the fireworks to start at midnight or counting down. And then everybody's like banging pots and things. Though those were good memories. I think they still do fireworks in our town currently for New Year's. But the kids don't stay up late enough for that. So it's very much just a kind of an adult thing. And in recent years, especially with young children, it's just usually my wife and I watching TV until either midnight hits or we decide that we're too tired and we go to bed.
You don't let your kids stay up till midnight on New Year's?
Why? Like, what's the point? Like, why?
I don't know. I remember as a kid I never got to stay up late. This is a time where it feels like, all right, let's stay up late because I want to see if something magical happens when it turns from one year to the next.
The only memory I have of that was when we went from 1999 to 2000. I still remember that whole New Year's Day, like watching the news to see, because they had a guy, the stupidest thing, they had a guy and they sent him to like some island in the middle of the Pacific. Like, this is the first place on Earth where it's going to turn the year 2000. And everybody was worried about the Y2K bug. And I remember watching that on TV thinking, what happens if he counts down from 5, goes to 0, and then his broadcast goes to static? And then we watch the world shut down one time zone at a time as it comes towards us. Like, I was just thinking what bedlam that would create.
This is either a supreme vote of confidence that everything's going to be okay, or the worst journalistic decision ever.
Because we'd have, like, in America, we'd have, what, like 12 hours before it, like, rolled over to us, knowing that, like,
enough
the world was going to
time for everybody to start rioting.
Oh, yeah. Like, that would be terrible.
Wow. Yeah. So I have, over the past, turned New Year's into my time of adventures. And I've had some great New Year's adventures. So back when I just graduated from college, we moved to Las Vegas, and we were there in like the winter of 2002. And my wife and I got tickets to go see a concert. I think it was Sugar Ray at the House of Blues, and went down in Las Vegas and the fireworks there. And as if that could be topped, then we moved to Italy and we went to Rome for New Year's, and we were on our hotel rooftop, and all around us fireworks were going off in the city of Rome. And then, as if that wasn't the pinnacle of it, then a couple years later we moved to England, and I saw on TV one year that everyone goes down in London to the banks of the River Thames across from Big Ben and the Eye of London, the giant Ferris wheel that's there over the river, and they shoot off fireworks. And then they said, next year we're ticketing it. So I got in the queue and I got tickets for it. My parents came to visit, and we took all the kids and went down and stood on the banks of the Thames and watched the fireworks for New Year's. And that was, I don't see how that will ever be topped. Those, maybe Times Square in New York, but those are some great adventures. I love doing that on New Year's.
That sounds awesome. That's way better than what I think New Year's is. Like, I get this vague sense from pop culture that New Year's is this time of change, and this is the day where you're going to do all the things that you didn't have courage to do the remaining of the year. But at least for me, I never do it. You just kind of sit at home and maybe you have a New Year's party, but everybody leaves before midnight.
I think of that scene from Forrest Gump where Lieutenant Dan is still not pulled his head out of his butt yet. And he's sitting in the bar and they're getting liquored up, and he's got a prostitute on his lap. And all the background noise kind of fades for a second, and it zooms in on her face, and she says, "It's a whole new year. Like, you can just be a whole different person." Almost like she's regretting all of her life choices that led her to that moment.
Of course, that's what you would think. She's talking to Lieutenant Dan's character. Lieutenant Dan could be a whole different person.
But that's such a seductive idea. And I like that it has this focal point on a single holiday. And I think that's why it's so persistent in people's minds. People want to believe in the idea of redemption, of change in their life, of being able to change who you are into something new.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. That's probably where these resolutions are coming from. These are all the things that I wish I did last year. That's set a commitment. Let's make a goal. And here's a clear-cut day. Why not make it New Year's? And let's just say that next year, from now on, I'm going to be the person that I've always aspired to be.
Yeah. Now there's the cynical version of that. You know, all the people who regularly go to gym and go, oh, great, the gym's going to be crowded for the next 6 weeks until all the New Year's resolution people fade out.
As a person who used to go to the gym regularly for years at a time, yes, it was very annoying to have a New Year's rush of all these fatties coming in and taking up my equipment and not knowing how to use it.
I understand that perspective. I also find it to be very inspiring. And I think of all those people, they're still better off than if they hadn't done anything at all. Maybe one or two of them stick. Maybe some of them just adopt a new habit or two that makes their life better. I am very much in favor of the idea of New Year's resolutions, and I fight people that are just cynical against the idea. Fight against it. Talk about why it shouldn't be a thing at all. To poo-poo people's ideas. I think if you want to believe in redemption, if you want to believe in change in your life, great. And if New Year's is the chance and the time you need to do it, I am all on board. I will support you. I will cheer for you. I think it's great.
I agree all the way up to the whole point where it's New Year's only. Like, if you want to initiate positive change in your life, you can do that.
Sure. If you want to quit smoking, what better time to start than now?
Yeah, like it doesn't matter if it's a random Tuesday in April. Like just make the positive change in your life whenever you think you need it. You don't have to wait for New Year's. New Year's is just a day where basically people blow off work and drink too much.
Okay. So we've talked about all four of what we call the holidays. You know, we've got the event ones and the seasonal ones and the kind of. We haven't really talked about how this influence works. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Influences work? Everybody blows off work. Everybody knows nothing's getting done these holidays.
Yeah, it feels like the first week in January, the attitude at work is like, oh my gosh, we're late on everything. Hurry up.
No, wait, I took the entire week off for Thanksgiving. I plan on taking the entire week between Christmas and New Year's off. I plan on taking a couple days before Christmas off. Like, it's just kind of like this one of those lies that everybody tells in society to keep society working. We all kind of just agree under the table that no one's really getting anything done around these days.
Yeah, and sometimes it's above the table. Like, well, we could schedule this meeting for the 18th of December because we always do it on the third Wednesday of the month or whatever, but that's not happening, so we're just going to cancel it.
There's always a party pooper. This year, my wife had basically the whole week of Thanksgiving off, except she got an email from the state. There was some hearing that she had to go to, and her county organization that she works for has the day off as a holiday, but the state's like, no, this is not a state holiday. This is a work day, the day after Thanksgiving. And she had to go on her computer and log in and do full up work on the day after Thanksgiving for a couple of hours because the state decided, no, this is a work day. We're going to get stuff done.
Okay. I'm sure they were very productive that day.
Yeah, that's really stupid.
Now, this week, my wife turned on the definitive film version of Charles Dickens' classic A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
You know which one that is,
the
right?
old one. I mean, like, there's so many versions of A Christmas Carol.
Absolutely not. It's the Muppets.
Oh, the Muppet one. Okay, yes, of course. We talked about that last holiday time. That is the version.
Yes, it is the definitive version. Not just. I don't just mean that in a tongue-in-cheek way. It is the best version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. But there's a scene, and you realize that this dilemma you're expressing isn't new. There's a scene where they're asking to leave a little bit early on the day on Christmas Eve, and Scrooge is having this debate with his employees on productivity in the holiday season, and he's talking about why it should still be a work day, and people think that they get time off just because of whatever nonsense is. Yeah. This is not a new dilemma. It's quite old.
The pre-industrialized society has been struggling with this.
I think it serves as a purpose. I think we need a break. Just the same as in a day or in an hour, we need to give our minds and bodies and spirits a break. There's a seasonal need for that as well. And I think the holidays do that for us.
And honestly, this is one of those things where all it is a societal contract. If everybody in the world agrees that we're not going to get any work done on these days, then guess what? Like, if everything stops moving, nobody gets ahead. Like, if we all take this break at the same time, it just works out.
But if there's that one guy...
Yeah, the one freaking Scrooge over here working his Muppets to death.
Well, Josh, I don't know about you, but even though I have favorites and things, I am very much in favor of the holiday season, of the beautiful colors and traditions and decorations, delicious things to eat, gifts to give to people, time to spend with loved ones. What a wonderful time of year.
Oh, the holidays are the best. If for no other reason than you have these, like, you just have these goals and these milestones that are set, like, not so far in the future that they're not real, but they're close enough that you can plan around and do them. And it just keeps moving the season along, and you get to celebrate and be excited and be happy about just the next thing that's coming.
Yeah. And I am. I'm looking forward to Christmas. I'll enjoy some music. We'll get our decorations up. It'll be great.
I'm planning on making you a very heartfelt Christmas gift that I will mail to you in July, and you will confuse it for your birthday present. It'll be wonderful.
I hope our families get to enjoy the holidays together someday in the future, Josh. That concludes the 2-part holiday extravaganza that took us 2 episodes to get through. Wow. For next time, I think we need to get back to something that's a little bit less seasonal. So I know that you have been a big fan of the idea of turning your favorite book series into a television program. So tell us where we're at right now with The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime.
I'm fangirling so hard about The Wheel of Time on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, we're not reviewing it yet. We're just teasing it for next time.
But it's so good, and I encourage people to go watch it. And we were talking about this before the podcast, and I said that while they have taken many liberties and they've adapted several things to be better for a television series than a book series, it's just another turning of the wheel. Like, it's another telling of the same story in the same universe with the same characters and the same conflicts. And it's been great, and it's so good. And I'm so happy that they have put as much money into it as it needs to tell this story right. And I so hope that it gets enough viewership that it keeps going until they can conclude the whole series, which would be many, many years from now.
Great. So we'll do our little part here on the Bad at Magic podcast. We're gonna review the first 4 or 5 episodes that have come out between when it started and when we air episode 61 of Bad at Magic. And listeners, if you're interested, go on Amazon Prime and watch it, and you can join in us with the discussion. There's one other thing I want to talk about next time, and that was a movie I saw on Netflix that I also want to recommend to our audience and that we'll talk about next time, and it's called Tick, Tick, Boom. And it is based on the life of... it's a memoir from a portion of the life of Jonathan Larson, who was the writer of the Broadway musical Rent, and what happened in his life surrounding the time that he was writing it. It's starring the guy that played Spider-Man. I'm spacing everybody's names
Garfield
now,
something.
but Andrew Garfield. He was fantastic in it, and it's really good. It's very lighthearted. It's a musical, so they break out in song in their everyday life from time to time. So it's great. Fantastic. Recommend it. We'll talk about that.
Does your life not break out in song sometimes, Ben? I know that happens to me every other day.
It absolutely does, Josh. And if you are interested in telling us what songs break out in your life, you can go on our social media pages. If you go to our Facebook page, you can join in the discussion there, see the photos I post with every episode, or you can go on our subreddit and join in honestly in the discussion and voice your opinions, as a lot of our listeners have been doing lately.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. I feel like that's the least you can do. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket right now and giving us a good rating on the podcast player of your choice. It is unbelievable the visibility we get on stuff like that. And if you want me to harass Ben about his choices and holiday traditions from now until the end of time, consider becoming a patron on one of our on our one Patreon page.
And happy holidays to you from the Bad at Magic podcast, and until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.